Next, we have the classic pasta bolognese with Parmigiano. And guys, this one just hits. I get cravings for pasta all the time, and like bolognese is just my go-to. I gotta stop eating this because I have another meal to try. Shit, I can't. And last but definitely not least, I've got here the Peruvian-style chicken thighs with cilantro, rice, and brown butter plantains. Get a little chicken bite going here. This is what you want. That's some good stuff, guys. Subscriptions start as low as $11 a meal, and the plan is super flexible. You can choose from 4 to 16 meals a week, and it's commitment free. You can skip or pause delivery, cancel at any time. You guys can get 50% off your first order of Cook Unity meals by going to cookunity.com/wavywebsurf and by using code WavyWebSurf50 at checkout. Big thanks to Cook Unity for sponsoring today's video. One of Omegle's first high-profile criminal degenerate users was a man named Richard Finkbeiner, a sick individual responsible for one of the most elaborate sextortion plots in United States history. In 2010, Richard Finkbeiner was a 39-year-old man living in Brazil, Indiana. Constantly online, this disgusting man would begin sexually interacting with minors in online video chats, using Omegle along with other platforms, recording his victims throughout these calls. According to the FBI, Finkbeiner, while using Omegle, would stream videos of pornography to those that he matched with in an attempt to coerce incoming minors to reciprocate acts in a sexual way. The minors, who thought they were interacting with the person shown in the porn video, would then be asked by Finkbeiner in text chat to join in, and some would sadly follow his instructions. When a minor fell for his trap, Finkbeiner would then record their camera footage and add it to his personal CP collection. And if that wasn't depraved enough for you, this guy would often later anonymously contact his victims, revealing to them the fact that he had recorded them participating in those sexual behaviors, almost in a braggadocious manner, like, "I gotcha." While performing digital surveillance on his victims, Richard would collect their sensitive personal details, later using that information for blackmail, threatening to release the videos to porn websites or to send them to the victims' friends, family, and school teachers, unless these victims continued making sexually explicit content with him, recruiting the minors as digital sex slaves of sorts, forced to participate in acts with him while he recorded them for his catalog. According to FBI reports, these acts included coercing them into exposing themselves, forcing them to wear embarrassing outfits, and even forcing them to scribble Finkbeiner's online alias on their body with a permanent marker. Through these elaborate and sickening strategies, Richard was able to collect a multitude of victims, both male and females, whose ages ranged from 12 years old to 17, and were living in 9 different states, including Indiana, West Virginia, Iowa, Wisconsin, Ohio, New York, Michigan, Illinois, and Colorado. There was even one case involving a 12-year-old boy, with transcripts showcasing the poor kid pleading with Richard in messages to not release his blackmail video to the internet, and the sick man essentially telling the boy tough luck and uploading the stuff anyways. Dude was a sadist and psychopath, a pedophilic monster. Another incident showing how heartless this guy was involved a teenage girl who was so traumatized after falling victim to Finkbeiner's trap, she attempted suicide. Thankfully, she would survive. Now, she later sent an email to Finkbeiner stating what she had done, and Finkbeiner would then reply with, "Glad I could help." Finkbeiner was able to get away with performing these highly exploitative acts for around 2 years, but sexual extortion reports from some of his later victims, a 14-year-old boy in Maryland and another in Michigan, would catch the attention of the feds. Authorities began an investigation, setting up a collaboration between the FBI and sheriff departments from all over the country where the reported crimes were taking place. This included the Oakland County, Michigan Sheriff's Department and the Prince George County's Maryland Department, with significant assistance from the Indiana State Police, the Clay County Sheriff's Department, the Terre Haute Police Department, and the Kokomo Police Department. It was truly a national endeavor. After a thorough investigation, authorities were able to trace these sickening crimes back to Richard, and he was pinned as the culprit. The monster of Omegle would finally be arrested on April 6th of 2012, with the feds seizing a staggering 22,000 video files from webcam feeds recorded by Finkbeiner, half of which depicted sexual content from his sextortion ventures. The FBI also recovered close to 47,000 downloaded images, many of which depicted CP. The police would then begin the work in unwrapping his elaborate sextortion scheme, which would give Finkbeiner additional charges. In total, Finkbeiner was charged with 10 counts of sexual exploitation of children, 2 counts of extortion, and 1 count of possession of CP. The CP charge came from Richard both possessing images from the minors that he had extorted, as well as an entirely different collection of files. These are some serious charges, but they don't truly reflect the massive victim pool that Finkbeiner had accumulated. Through reviewing the man's email communications, authorities were able to ascertain that there were at least 153 victims, and only 20 of them had been identified by name and confirmed by the authorities. Law enforcement would say, quote, "These charges formalize allegations of a systemic scheme to victimize hundreds of children and teenagers all over the country. Thanks to the tireless work of investigators over the last 3 months, we have been able to identify and contact many victims of these alleged acts. This process is ongoing, and we continue to do all we can to offer support after the nightmare they are alleged to have endured." Richard faced a maximum of 30 years in prison for each count of sexual exploitation of children, 2 years for the extortion charges, and a $250,000 fine for each of the charged offenses. In January of 2013, Richard would plead guilty to the charges of sexual exploitation and CP, and the deviant would be sentenced to serve 40 years in prison and was hit with a $70,000 fine, all coming on June 26th of 2013. It was also determined that after he was done serving his prison sentence, Richard would be forced to serve a lifetime of supervised release. At the time of his case being concluded, it was one of the largest sextortion cases in the country. This was the first major case where a criminal used Omegle to facilitate his crime, and it most certainly wouldn't be the last time the site would see foul play. Now we jump forward about 3 years to 2013 to our next case. It's the story of military serviceman Colin Lowry, a man not guilty for sex crimes against children, but for killing someone live on camera, broadcasting the act to an unsuspecting user live on Omegle, that user being still unknown to this day. On October 22nd of 2013, a 22-year-old Nevada Army reservist named Colin Lowry, along with 23-year-old Cherish Pincombe, were hanging out together with one of Colin's roommates named Patrick within Colin's home in Henderson, Nevada. During this chill session, they decided it would be fun to hop on Omegle and talk to some strangers, as one would do back in 2013. But sadly, this would be no routine night on Omegle, as a freak tragedy would begin to unfold the moment that their webcam booted up. According to reports, the story goes as follows. After chatting to a few different people, Colin and Cherish were matched up with a woman from Norway who, curious about American culture, had asked if the group owned any guns. Colin, a military serviceman, most certainly did, and would promptly step out of view of the camera, returning after a short while with his rifle and a .45 caliber handgun. He then would begin eagerly showcasing the firearms to the anonymous Omegle user. Now, at some point, Colin is said to leave the area of the Omegle camera setup to go use the bathroom, leaving his guns at the computer, only to return again shortly after. By this point, the Norwegian had left, and another Omegle user is said to have been paired up with them. Now, what happens next is somewhat disputed, as the footage is not available for the public to view. But it's alleged that while resuming showing off his handgun, Colin would raise the pistol to Cherish's head in what could be described as a joking fashion and would pull the trigger, possibly believing that it wasn't loaded. The gun would discharge, shooting Cherish in the head, causing the woman to go limp. She was critically injured, and the shooting was broadcasted live to an anonymous viewer. While I'm unable to ascertain at what time of night or early morning the shooting occurred, at around 8:30 a.m., Colin Colin Lowry would call 911 and report that a gun had been accidentally discharged within his home. Cherish Pincombe would be taken to the Sunrise Hospital, where she would later sadly die from the injuries that she had sustained in the shooting. When questioned by the police, Colin would admit that he had been drinking alcohol, but stated that he had no idea that the handgun was loaded, trying to plead the case of this whole thing being nothing more than a freak accident. Considering the apparent negligence at play, police felt this to be more than just a mistake and arrested Colin for the killing. He would insist that it wasn't his fault, even reportedly claiming that Cherish had loaded the weapon while he was in the bathroom. An interesting twist if true. However, investigators pushed back, stating that Colin had likely taken the weapon to the bathroom with him, inserting the magazine and loading it in there. Yeah, if you haven't picked up on it, the cops believe that Colin had straight up murdered this woman in cold blood like it was premeditated. In fact, they went as far as insinuating this whole situation was much more than accidental manslaughter. It was some sort of methodical thrill kill, with Colin booting up Omegle with the intention of slaying his friend live on camera. That's what they thought. Now, it's to note that there were no other witnesses within the room when the shooting occurred. Colin's roommate was apparently no longer around when this transpired. The cops had to get their hands on the Omegle footage, as it likely held the truth of what actually took place that evening. Police subpoenaed the Portland, Oregon-based website Omegle for footage of the shooting to possibly attain some sort of evidence to confirm their suspicions. They would receive some snapshots from Omegle, but it was only the chat portion of the website. These conversations, including some messages from Lowry, Pincombe, and the person that they were matched with. Sadly, though, it appears footage had not been archived by Omegle. But what about the other person on the other end of the video chat? Couldn't they speak to what had happened? Sadly, due to the anonymous nature of Omegle, this person has never been identified, and investigators were unable to ascertain any IP or metadata that could lead them in the right direction in regard to finding the enigmatic witness of the Omegle shooting. If someone was watching their screen at the time, it's very likely that they are keeping that gruesome moment with them to the grave, as no one has ever come forward. The snapshots recovered by the cops would unfortunately reveal very little, and it was a dead end barking up that tree. Colin's case would have to move forward without any video evidence and approached with a more traditional forensic style. After his arrest, Colin's bail would be set at $200,000, and investigators checked the magazine for Cherish's fingerprints to see if Colin's story had checked out. They would find that the physical evidence didn't show any of Cherish's fingerprints on the magazine. Something else interesting to think about here, Colin Lowry was a trained staff sergeant in the military reserve. He had many years of weapons training, apparently weapons training that he decided to just randomly forego on that day and act like a fool. I'm not trying to say that I know for a fact that Colin had a actual, inclination of murdering Cherish, but it is unusual for someone in the military to handle a gun this irresponsibly. There was reason for police to be suspicious. Later, Colin Lowry's roommates testified that Cherish and Colin, along with everyone else in the house, had a playful relationship with one another. Duffy, one of the other roommates, would even tell the court that he had not once ever seen Lowry get angry at Cherish. Colin Lowry's attorney would use this to argue that his client should be tried for manslaughter and not straight-up murder. Quote, "I heard no evidence whatsoever of premeditation, and I heard no evidence whatsoever of malice," the lawyer said. The judge would disagree and ordered that Colin should be tried on an open murder charge. In August of 2014, Colin would cut a deal with prosecutors and pled guilty to voluntary manslaughter with a weapon. And on October 24th of 2014, Colin Lowry would be sentenced to 8 to 20 years in prison. During sentencing, Colin would apologize to Cherish's family within the courtroom, saying he had never meant to hurt anybody. It seems his words fell on deaf ears, though, as family members of the slain victim were quoted as calling Colin a cold-blooded killer. It's somewhat unsettling to think that there is someone out there who may have watched this shooting take place live on Omegle and just has gone about their life with that horrific scene burned into their brain. Whoever you are, I hope you're doing well, and perhaps one day, come forward. Let's talk.
Watch your fire.
sadly, not long after the shooting incident, another child sexual exploitation case would come forward, involving a man named Dennis Witt, who would challenge underage girls on Omegle to a sick game in an effort to fulfill his twisted fantasies. Beginning in late 2013 and early 2014, 40-year-old Dennis Witt of Marina, California, would begin participating in behavior that went beyond degeneracy, with the man frequenting websites like Omegle, pretending to be a 16-year-old boy named Lucas. Using this fake persona, he would interact with underage girls, never showing his face. During these chats, the 40-year-old fraud would quickly get sexual. Acting as Lucas, he devised the game, in which young girls would gain points for participating in lewd behavior. For example, girls could receive a point for taking off a piece of their clothing, or would receive more points by performing outright sex acts. A criminal complaint describes his activity. 3 girls began to play a game whereby they would do things on camera to earn points. Tasks began with things like waving and blowing kisses, but progressed to showing Lucas their genitalia, unquote. Dennis groomed these girls on Omegle and also on his Skype account that went by the username Vampirate God, and his profile picture was a skull and crossbones. The guy is like a modern-day Camden Gerard Davis, but white and 40 years old. Now, what's truly sickening about Dennis in particular in the context of this video is the ages of the people that he victimized. The age range of his victims went from 16 all the way down to 7 years old. Just some really unspeakable crimes here. I say this with all seriousness. There are actual monsters that walk the earth, and I don't know how you could have any sympathy for someone like this. But it's just disgusting. The conversations with these 4 particular underage victims, who were all from Jefferson County, New York, began in May of 2013, according to the criminal complaint. It stated that during these interactions, Dennis recorded the girls 48 times between July 25th of 2013 and September 16th of 2013. The oldest one, at 16 years old, would communicate with Witt daily, with the others being communicated with far less frequently. While Dennis performed these abhorrent acts with the children, it would not be long before the authorities got tipped off, as one of the fathers of the 4 underage victims from Jefferson County, New York, would find about the activities and alert the proper authorities and channels. The FBI, when alerted to this, would team up with the Silicon Valley Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force, a group that specializes in targeting people who produce and distribute CP online. Together, they were able to find Dennis's Gmail, AOL account, and Skype account, and were able to backtrace these accounts, finding his IP address, which gave them his real-life location. The FBI then executed a search warrant, and on April 30th of 2014, authorities would storm into Dennis Witt's house in Marina, California, where they would confirm that Dennis was in fact Lucas, and they arrested the man and escorted him outside in handcuffs. In a darkly hilarious moment, the pathetic Dennis would be photographed in handcuffs wearing a "Wanted Dead or Alive" t-shirt. Looks like the fat degenerate slob really dressed up for the occasion. What else would you expect from some fucking loser that goes by Vampirate God on the internet and abuses children? While in Dennis's house, authorities would search through his computers and find 48 video files and 20 image files consisting of CP. Some of these videos were over an hour long. There was also content containing other children found on the internet as well. In total, a catalog of over 10,000 videos and image files were looked through. After his arrest, Dennis would admit to the officers that he had captured the videos of the underage girls and saved them to a folder titled My Girls. This guy is a true piece of work, ain't he? Dennis Witt would later be extradited to New York to face trial. He would plead guilty in November of 2014, and on April 8th, 2015, Dennis would be sentenced to 60 years in federal prison on 7 counts of sexually exploiting children. When released from prison, Dennis must be put on supervised release for life and will be required to register as a sex offender. From what I can find, there was an attempt to appeal the sentencing, but it was denied. Thank God. Let's take a breather. Now we enter an era of relative peace. Let's do a bit of an Omegle history lesson. Now, thankfully, for the next several years, Omegle would be free from major criminal events. Yeah, old men still went on there to broadcast themselves jerking off, but for the most part, things were quiet on the site. People were using it as it was intended, to have fun and talk to strangers and make, unique friendships with people from across the world, as was the intention of the site's creator, Leif K. Brooks. Leif had single-handedly developed Omegle while living at his parents' house when he was just 18 years old. He wanted to connect people from around the world in video form at random, a novel concept for the time. The 18-year-old just wanted people to have fun and communicate anonymously online. Talk to strangers, as was the slogan of the website. Launched in 2009, his creation was an instant hit, and Omegle would become established as a permanent part of internet culture in short time. A mainstay of web-based chatting visited by millions of people from around the world since. After all, Omegle's premise and what it was intended for was actually quite remarkable for the time. I mean, real-time video chatting on a web browser back in 2009 was kind of a big deal. Like, I personally remember hopping on Omegle with some buddies and ending up matching with some other teenagers our age somewhere else in the US and becoming friends with these guys. You might exchange Xbox gamer tags and play Call of Duty together, even keeping in touch with them for years at a time. When used correctly, Omegle could be a great way to make connections and friendships from the comfort of your own home. Sadly, though, Leif's vision for a connected internet would become tainted by those with abusive tendencies. Predators began taking advantage of the accessibility of his platform and used it as a tool to victimize the many children that regularly visited it. This was a fact that hurt Leif on a personal level, as he himself is a self-admitted survivor of childhood rape. Though despite the misuse of his creation, the vast majority of people were using Omegle to make friends and simply to chat. Leif saw no reason to shut down the site completely and spoil the fun for everyone because of the actions of a few. This would be a stance that would prove increasingly difficult to maintain as more time passed and more predators emerged. Now, moving a bit forward on our timeline, we look at an Omegle abuse case from 2019, a particularly egregious one in that the perpetrator of this crime was in fact an officer of the law, a seemingly trustworthy member of society. 30-year-old Simeon Smith from Chesterfield, Virginia, worked as a police officer within the city, beginning his occupation with the department in May of 2017. On the surface, Simeon was unlike any upstart officer, a seemingly clean-cut man, eager and filled with an almost naive enthusiasm for upholding the law and protecting the community. But his disposition was nothing more than a facade, as beneath the surface, this guy was nothing more than a sick freak with a badge. On March 18, 2019, just before noon, 30-year-old Simeon Smith was apparently feeling aroused and would take to Omegle, looking for both women and young girls to talk to. It seems age mattered little. Officer Simeon Smith would eventually be matched up with an account claiming to be a 14-year-old teenage girl named Crystal. At the beginning of their lengthy and scandalous conversation, Simeon asked for the girl's age, to which she said she was 14. He then allegedly responded with, 30, male, Richmond. Is that okay? The conversation led by Simeon then escalated to a sexual nature, with Simeon asking the minor, quote, tell me how old you were the first time you did anything sexual, unquote. Simeon pushed the sexual agenda in this conversation, with Crystal reportedly not reciprocating. The chat log ends with Simeon saying, quote, oh, and you asked where we would do it? Ideally on your bed. But if that's too risky, I'll rent a room at a hotel, unquote. Yeah, that's a policeman stating explicitly where and how he would like to have sex with someone who he thinks is a 14-year-old girl. Now, thankfully, what you must know is that there wasn't actually a real 14-year-old girl here. It was an undercover cop. Yes, the police, likely not realizing it at the time, had one of their own on the hook. In an effort to confidently identify who they were chatting with, the Crystal account would ask for the creep's social media, which led them to a Snapchat. Simeon would send Crystal a photo of himself, giving the undercover officers more evidence in regard to busting this at-large creep. During this investigation, the Hanover Police Department collaborated with members of the Southern Virginia Internet Crimes Against Children FBI Child Exploitation Task Force, which included officers from around the state of Virginia and the FBI and Homeland Security. This massive collection of law enforcement entities would hone in on Simeon, and they were able to link the IP address with Simeon's North Chesterfield home, a house that he actually lived in with his wife. The creep cop had been found and would be stung. Simeon would be arrested on March 22nd of 2019 and charged in Hanover County with 3 felony counts of use of a communication system to facilitate certain offenses involving children. Many items would be seized from his home, including Asus and Samsung laptops, 7 thumb drives, a CD, a yellow shirt, Sony and Nikon cameras, an external hard drive, and a ThinkPad laptop. Law enforcement likely eager to pry into these devices. He would be held without bond. The head of the Chesterfield Police Department would put out a statement while they were in the process of terminating Simeon's employment. Quote, "I am both disturbed and disgusted by the actions alleged, and I want to say clearly and unequivocally that there is no place for such conduct by anyone in our agency, in our profession, or frankly, in our community." In August of 2019, Simeon would plead guilty to 1 felony charge, while the other 2 were dropped. And on September 24th of 2019, Simeon was sentenced to 10 years in prison, but would have 8 years suspended along with 10 years of probation.
That's almost dry.
Now we move forward to 2020 in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic. Around this time, MWIII saw a rise in popularity as millions of lonesome people on lockdown sought to interact with others. With a vastly increased user base, this also meant more opportunity for crime to take place on MWIII. And that's what we find throughout 2020 and the early 2020s in general. MWIII just becomes rife with degeneracy. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. The major 2020 case in my eyes is the case of Crystal Scott. It's a bizarre situation involving a degenerate sadist responsible for hideous animal abuse and was only caught thanks to the concern of the online and furry community. In late April of 2020, when most were dealing with social distancing and lockdowns, folks from all walks of life flocked to MWIII, and one community that raised eyebrows in particular were the furries. Furries, thanks to their wacky animal costumes, were often pretty humorous to come across on the site, and many would enjoy interacting with them. The already isolated furries took to MWIII en masse during the pandemic, where they could discuss their love for the fandom, entertain others, and in some cases, just provide some wholesome cringe. But it wasn't all fun and games for the furries. In the midst of the COVID malaise, a furry browsing MWIII would come across a harrowing spectacle after being matched with an anonymous user. This camera feed showcased an anonymous woman that appeared to be wearing a mask made out of a freshly skinned animal hide, and they were holding a miniature, bloody and fleshy-looking animal skull. These animal parts seemed like they had been procured from a recently killed animal, according to the user. The frightened furry snapped some photos of the scene and shared it to the web, thinking that the parts used in the individual's costume may have been from a freshly slain household pet. More sightings of this mysterious figure would be reported in short time, with all who encountered the account feeling extremely disturbed. This story was initially contained within the furry community, as it was apparently a furry who had found the anonymous user first, and the report would cause quite a bit of concern for the furries. As they did their best to investigate the anonymous woman from MWIII further, they found troubling hashtags associated with the grisly user. Hashtag furries, hashtag furry fandom, and most importantly, hashtag fursuit. Creating a fursuit out of animals slain for the purpose of creating a costume is unsurprisingly frowned upon within the furry community. And as far as I'm aware of, it is most likely illegal in most places. At least in the sense of using like cats and dogs, which appeared to be what was going on here. Did MWIII have an animal slaying fursuit maker on its hands? It wouldn't be long before these collective incidents would go viral, and many on Reddit would post about it. The thread would go as far as to allege that the woman on Omegle killed, burned, and skinned cats, and they had some compelling evidence to back this up. In the Reddit thread, an Omegle user would share an image that they had snapped of the mysterious woman while browsing Omegle, and this gruesome image was that of her holding a skinned cat's head with the musculature and eyeballs still attached. It's really disgusting, and viewer discretion is highly advised if you go about seeking this photo out for yourself. But yeah, the cat looked like it was recently killed, and with this it became more likely that people really were dealing with some sort of Omegle cat killer. The public's interest in this case rose, as now not was just the furry community looking into it, the broader internet was as well. A TikTok account allegedly created by the crazy cat-killing Omegle woman was discovered with a description describing herself as a French taxidermist. Other accounts allegedly operated by the user would post taunting messages to those trying to track the Omegle cat killer down, such as "good luck to all" and "happy hunting." She even claimed to have actively infiltrated Discord groups that had been created to hunt her down. It seemed like this was nothing more than a game to this person. Animal abuse is no joke, however, and nobody found her sick antics entertaining. I mean, it's like she was trying to turn this into some kind of fucking ARG, but she's killing animals to facilitate that, allegedly. Why do this? One TikTok post allegedly written by the cat killer elaborates on their motive as to why. Quote, "Because I'm tired of degenerate brats and people who think that they are better than those. I was raped once by my boyfriend. I want to put fear in others, even if I scar brats." Okay, so let me get this straight. So apparently she got raped and went Joker mode, deciding to get a revenge on her abuser by striking fear into random strangers online with dead animals. You know therapy exists, right? Like you can literally just get counseling. Now this crazy cat killer lady seemed to be so confident in her anonymity and believing that she wouldn't get caught that she actually published her schedule to her TikTok as to when she would be going live on Omegle. So you can clearly kind of see here that this is like a give me attention kind of thing. Law enforcement really needed to step in like yesterday. The case had become quite the spectacle in the online world, and its notoriety would urge people to pressure law enforcement to get involved, with cyber sleuths sending calls and emails regarding the Omegle cat killer to police agencies across the U.S. But turns out cops wouldn't be necessary in unmasking this psychopathic animal abuser. Finally, after weeks and weeks of non-stop clue hunting and putting the dots together, the most dedicated of amateur online investigators pieced together the puzzle. Picking up the crumbs of evidence left by the Omegle woman, they were finally able to identify her. It was 19-year-old Crystal Scott from Kokomo, Indiana. She was the woman behind the gruesome Omegle streams. Now law enforcement got involved and would uncover the extent of the Omegle cretin's degeneracy. On May 3rd of 2020, Kokomo police would search 19-year-old Crystal Scott's home in Indiana. There, they would seize multiple deceased animals and body parts, including 2 cats in her freezer and a glass jar filled with an unidentified animal. Crystal had claimed that these animals were dead when she found them. Sadly, though, local police were not able to charge Crystal during this first visit, and the raid was falsely reported on by local authorities who called Crystal a hoax artist. Apparently, the police needed more evidence that she was harming or killing the animals found dead on her property, and that evidence would come. A bit over a month later, on June 26th of 2020, another complaint of animal cruelty would be submitted to law enforcement regarding Crystal, where a man believed that a pregnant cat that he had given to Crystal had been tortured and possibly killed by her. With this, finally, the FBI stepped in, and in July of 2020, Crystal was arrested on charges of animal crushing. The Omegle cat abuser had finally been put in handcuffs. At the time of her arrest, Crystal Scott was facing up to 7 years in prison and a $250,000 fine. She accepted a plea deal on November 10th of 2021 where she pled guilty to the 2 charges of animal crushing and was sentenced to serve 30 months in prison and 5 years of supervised release. and it's very likely that those creatures that were shown on camera were ones that she had killed. You have to give a nod to the furry community for blowing this story up in the initial stages and getting the ball rolling in regards to putting this monster in a cage where she belongs. Now we get to our final headline story in the chronology of criminal activity on Omegle. It's the last major case before the site's official shutdown. It involves an Omegle predator hunter of sorts busting an online creep by the name of Matthew Manoski. On June 4th of 2023, YouTuber Nico is Cold would upload the first of his catching creeps on Omegle videos. In this series, Nico would employ a young-looking adult woman that pretended to be underage in an effort to catch older men sexually flirting or interacting with them, under the assumption that the grown woman was a minor. He's trying to catch pedophiles basically using an adult posing as a minor. One of these creeps discovered by Nico and his team would be a man going by the name of Mike, who during the conversation would be told that the girl on camera was 16. Despite this, Mike would ask the young girl to take her sweatpants off, after which Nico would reveal himself, making the creep known that he had been caught in 4K. While indeed creepy, nothing overtly criminal had been caught in Nico's video. But it was the comments section under Nico's video that was far more interesting in terms of spelling out who Mike really was. Curiously though, the day that Nico uploaded this video, the YouTuber would receive a plethora of comments from random internet users, expressing how they too had had uncomfortable run-ins with this Mike fellow on Omegle, insinuating that he was a serial Omegle sex pest of sorts that targeted the underage. A comment says, "Guys, please read this. I have met one of the creeps on here. So a few weeks ago, I was 14. I'm 15 now. But the one who is named Mike at 5 minutes 16 was always on the tag bored. And I remember the first time I saw him was traumatizing. Back then, I tried to be nice like everyone, and well, that was a bad idea. He kept calling me cute and pretty repeatedly asked me if I thought he was attractive, to which my reply was that I thought he looked like a dad, and he just laughed. I wanted this guy to be exposed so much, so I asked him questions. He has a job and a wife and obviously his 16-year-old kid. I skipped him when he told me he had a fetish for like underwear and wanted to know what color mine were. Before I skipped him, however, I told him in the chat that he was a pedo and to get off Omegle, but I saw him again a week ago. It was traumatizing, so I skipped. I wanted him to get caught so badly, but thank you so much, Nico, for catching him. I really hoped this would happen. I'm still scared to get on Omegle nowadays, and mostly do it with friends, but the fact that over 300,000 people saw his face, I'm so happy. Thank you, I can sleep well tonight. Edit, I forgot to mention his age is 53. I made him tell me for the first appearance I had with him. Merely a few weeks later, Nico would meet Mike again in his second edition of Catching Creeps on Omegle. In this video, Mike would run away once more after Nico appeared on camera.
Yeah, buddy, you're nothing. Fucking guy, bro.
Later, it would be revealed that Mike was actually caught flirting on another YouTuber's Omegle creep busting channel called Ashley Guggs. He was seen in a video called Thirst Trapping Predators on Omegle, uploaded on June 8th of 2022. And this was published a whole year before Nico's first exposed video came out. So he had been recklessly flirting for a while, allegedly. In this Ashley video, Mike would say that his age was 52 years old and that he was a kinky, dirty, perverted old man. Ashley would then attempt to bait Mike and say that she was only 15, to which Mike replied, quote, "This is where the fun begins." But apparently he realized he was being set up and dipped out. Mike likely thought that his run-ins with the Omegle predator hunters would have little impact on his life. Sure, he got ridiculed by a few YouTubers, but at least he was staying out of a jail cell. At least these guys weren't cops, right? Well, the continuous pattern of this guy showing up in Omegle predator videos would catch up to him and have catastrophic repercussions on Mike's family and his work career, and his appearances in these videos would lead to him being suspected by actual law enforcement and put behind bars. As stated by Nico is Cold on August 17th of 2023, Mike's son would get into contact with Nico, apparently revealing to Nico that Mike's real name wasn't Mike at all, and that his real name was actually Matthew Manowski.
On August 17, 2023, Mike's son messaged me on Instagram. And as it turns out, Mike had been lying about his identity the whole time. His real name was Matthew.
The son would explain to Nico that his videos had been sent to his stepmom, or Matthew's wife, and that the couple was in the process of getting a divorce. The son apparently expressed to Nico, though, that he hoped the videos could be taken down due to the embarrassment that he and his family were receiving.
Mom at the time saw the video, and now they are in the middle of a divorce. My whole family knows, and it's just been not good recently. I know it's your job, but if you could do something about the video, removing it would be the best option for me and my family. People at my school know about it, and I don't want to go back to school and get made fun of for it.
While this is happening, family members of Matt are getting in touch with Nico as well, as the videos had gotten on their radar and they were looking into the situation.
The guy that you guys caught twice in your Amigo videos is quite literally my second cousin. My dad got sent this video today, and I've been digging into this more for him before we take action.
And then an alleged detective from a police department in Matt's local area would contact Nico, revealing that Matt was a part of a separate investigation, like he was already being looked into.
Identifying a subject in one of your potentially on Nico's videos, and that subject is a part of a separate investigation. I believe your video would be beneficial to my investigation.
Now get this. In Nico's video, he would reveal that Matt was telling his family members that he was a paid actor and that this was some sort of collaboration with Nico. Like, dude was trying to say he was in on Nico's videos. Naturally, when these family members reached out, Nico would tell them that this was a complete fucking lie. Becoming more desperate to save his reputation, later Matt would somehow find Nico's phone number and was able to get in touch with the YouTuber to plead his case. Nico recorded the call.
I know that my son has reached out to you, and I appreciate you taking the time to actually listen to what he has to say.
I just wanted to talk and just see what's going on.
With multiple reports and video appearances, the FBI did actually get involved with Matt. It would be revealed that Matt was from Valparaiso, Indiana, and the underage predator allegations surrounding him were spreading like wildfire in the community. People around the city would give tips to the FBI, which led to Matthew's arrest on October 6th of 2023, due to the separate investigation mentioned previously. Turns out he was allegedly doing more than just flirting with minors on Omegle. Matt would be charged with one count of child molestation, where it was disclosed that the 53-year-old Matthew Manowski was being accused of molesting a young girl multiple times, starting when she was 9 years old up until she was 11 years old. These alleged crimes took place from December of 2020 to July of 2023. In Nico's video, he would reveal that the girl was allegedly molested up to 2 times a week within the girl's household while the family was there. One such incident allegedly happening while they were all sitting at a table and she was sitting in Matt's lap. Matthew received one felony charge of child molestation. It was also reported that Matthew was a football coach as well. Pretty unsettling. It said that before the police were involved and Matthew was confronted about his allegations, he said, quote, "If I ever did anything she didn't like, she should have told me to stop." The YouTuber would also reveal that Omegle had ceased operations 1 month after Matthew's arrest. And Nico speculated that Matthew's arrest, along with the media attention around it, had a lot to do with the shutdown. The case of Matthew Manowski would be the final major criminal case to come out of Omegle, as the website would be officially shut down by Leaf in November of 2023, with Leaf himself stating in his own farewell address on the website that his decision was very much influenced by the abundance of child predators that had come to occupy his website over the years. It's truly sad what happened to Omegle, a place created by an enthusiastic 18-year-old programmer living in his mom's house who just wanted people to connect and have fun on the internet, only to slowly become corrupted over the years by the dregs of society, co-opted and defiled to a place that could only be browsed if using extreme caution. While Leaf states in his farewell address that his decision to shut down Omegle was motivated by his disgust of predators, there may have also been an additional factor. According to a report from ABC News, the shutdown was the result of a lawsuit. A suit filed back in 2021 against Leaf and Omegle from a sexual assault victim who claimed Omegle matched her with a sexual predator when she was just 11 years old, and this girl alleged that the match resulted in her being abused. According to ABC News, the attorney representing the victim claims the Omegle shutdown was the result of mediation between the platform and their client. Whatever the case, Omegle is gone. That being said, there are many other Omegle-like websites still around, like Chat Roulette, and random webcam-based chat sites are certainly not going anywhere. They're a staple of the internet. However, if today's timeline has taught you anything, use these platforms with caution. And if you have kids that are using them, some extremely careful supervision certainly wouldn't hurt. And well, you made it to the end of the timeline. That was the disgusting fall of Omegle. Let me know what you guys thought about the video down below in the comments section, and let me know who or what you want me to talk about next. I want to give a major shout out to my patrons. I appreciate you guys. Wavy Web Surf out. Peace.
As I promised yesterday, we are going to be diving more as to what we know about Call of Duty Black Ops 6 moving forward. And this one isn't necessarily a good one. It's pretty much a bad one, and that revolves around skill-based matchmaking and how it will affect Call of Duty Black Ops 6. And we actually know this because of a white paper that was put out last week in regards to skill-based matchmaking and exactly how it works in Call of Duty currently and what will change moving forward, hence how it will affect Black Ops 6. And a lot of you watching this are going to get pretty angry with this, and there is a reason for that, a really, really good reason for that, and that is what I wanted to explain how skill-based matchmaking actually works in Call of Duty and how it will work in Black Ops 6 moving forward. So, I am not going to read through the entirety of these white pages. Number one, they are extremely boring, and number two, there's really only like 3 or 4 points that you really need to know and understand as to how the skill-based matchmaking actually works. So, to break it down, what is skill-based matchmaking? So, matchmaking is essentially based off of 2 pillars. They say it's a lot more, but essentially it's 2 things. Your ping, and on top of that, your skill rating. They did confirm in this white paper that there is a hidden skill rating within matchmaking for regular multiplayer. Not ranked play. Ranked play is a shown skill rating, whereas normal play is a hidden skill rating. The way that they determine this is basically on a scale of 0 to 1. So if you're a completely average player, your skill rating will be 0.5. If you are the best player, 1. If you are the worst player, 0. Now, the other thing that they confirmed is that this is adjusted after every single game that you play. Hence why if you do really, really good in a game, the next game, you're probably going to get in a much more difficult lobby. They also stated that this changes based off of the game mode that you're playing. So for example, if you're playing Team Deathmatch, your kill death is going to be weighted much more heavily. Whereas if you are playing something like Domination, it might be more score or other factors that play into account, also wins and losses, things along those lines. Now, you may be wondering what this means for the overall gameplay experience and what you have experienced in game. Essentially, what you need to know is that the better you do game after game, the more difficult lobbies you are going to get put into. Your level is not put into effect, and this has nothing to do with your overall gameplay in the time that the game's out. So if you're a level 1000, you could very well get matched with a level 3 who has had really good games to start things out. That is completely possible. Hence, why, if you're a really good player, you will get matched with more hackers, even though they might only be level 15. It has nothing to do with their level or overall experience or how many games that they played. It is simply based off of recent and current experience in game. So, the biggest problem I have with this is it punishes variety in game. What do I mean by that? Essentially, it punishes you for trying anything off meta. If I have 3 good games in a row, that next game, in order for me to succeed and do well, if I switch to an off meta loadout, all of a sudden I'm at a huge disadvantage because it's putting me against other players who are better than the ones I previously played in, and for me to continue to do better, I pretty much have to use the top tier weapons. I hate that. I do not like that. They even say in the white papers that some of your gameplay experience, if you're using off Metalytics, you might have a couple of bad games in a row, so then it will put you with worse players. But all in all, that's just really annoying. You shouldn't have to get stomped for 2 games in order for this to happen. Now, this is where we get into why skill-based matchmaking is the way that it is. Essentially, they did some testing over a 2-week period where they had 2 cohort groups. One of the groups was given the normal skill-based matchmaking. The other was given reduced skill-based matchmaking. In other words, less skill-based matchmaking. What they found is the majority of players actually quit more often with less skill-based matchmaking, whereas the top 10% of players actually stayed in game and returned more frequently. Now, does this make sense? Yes, I have said this before and I will say it again. If you are watching this video, you are probably in the top 30% of players, if not the top 10% of players. If you're someone who watches videos on a game that you play, you are probably in the top tier of players. Keep in mind, the average kill death in a game is 0.86. Or around 0.86. Because of things like exploding barrels, killing yourself, things along those lines, it's actually below 1. So if you're like a 1.3 or 1.4 kill death player, you're probably in like the top 10%. Now, it turns out that the top 10% of players, as you were seeing by this graph here, are the ones that stay more frequently when skill-based matchmaking is reduced. They also did a study of increasing skill-based matchmaking, and it was the opposite. Top-tier players didn't stay as frequently, whereas the other players, the other 90% of players, actually stayed in game longer and returned more frequently. Now, if you are Activision and you are Sledgehammer, which version are you going to go with? The one that keeps 90% of the players more, or the one that keeps 10% of the players more? Now, I want to be clear, this is the part of the study that I believe is 100% correct. Now, their justification for it is what I disagree with. And what their justification is the more players that leave, the more sweaty the game actually gets. So what they mean by this is, say they get rid of skill-based matchmaking altogether. The players that are not going to return to the game are the worst players, therefore making the bottom bracket of players a little bit better. And then all of those leave, and the bottom bracket of players is a little better again. And it slowly does that until the only players that remain are the sweatiest of players. Now, the reason why I disagree with this is there was a time when skill-based matchmaking isn't the way that it is now. Skill-based matchmaking was more so based off of level, it was based off of player experience, it wasn't based off of every single game and how that you do in that individual game. So, because of this, I just don't see how that can be true. How is Call of Duty ever successful if players would just leave if they were not the best players in the lobby? Now, I will say, in recent Call of Duties, I find that less players leave. I do find that that is a thing in the middle of games. There's less leaving in games. Now, this is not the only situation where this causes a problem. Now, I've seen a lot of people say, oh, this is why players reverse boost. Now, in a lot of cases, reverse boosting doesn't actually work. And what they explain by this is kills to yourself. If you go and jump off the map 100 times in a row, they don't actually count towards your SR rating. They have seen people do that, and they've counteracted this, so it's only deaths from enemy players. So yes, you can go into 10 games in a row, just run towards the enemies on shipment, get killed over and over again, and then it's going to put you in a lower bracket. That would technically work. But there are other ways, because the other thing that they talk about is team balance. And I'm going to break this down as simply as possible because it is confusing. But the way that team balance actually works according to these white papers is if you have a player on your team who is a 1 SR, and you have a player on your team who is a 0.5 SR, and you have a player on your team who is a 0.1 SR, your overall SR for your team is going to be around a 0.5. And they will try to match you with another team that's overall SR is similar. And they try to create as little variance as possible because they want your chances to win a game to be 50-50. Every single game, that is what they want. Now, there are other things that come into play there. If you continue to play with that group, the better your group does, the more likely you are to be against sweatier and sweatier players because your SR is going to go up and your team SR is going to go up because of that as well. So, technically, if you are a top tier player, you are a 1% player, you are a 1 SR, the best way for you to get a crappy lobby is to get into a game with everyone else on your team being absolutely horrible. That is the way to do it. And yes, it does work. People have talked about it before. Two boxing is what some people call it. To have one Xbox that is logged into an AFK account, and then yours, which is a top tier account, and you're going to get worse lobbies. That does actually work, and what the information they've given out on this stands by that. Now, what they're going to try to do is match you with a similar team that has a bunch of horrible players and one really good player, and they think that that will balance it. Now, this also explains why when you're playing solo, your team, if you're a top tier player, can be absolutely garbage and then match you up against a bunch of average or even like one good player and a bunch of bad players. It tries to keep the match as close as possible to going a 50% win rate. And of course, that's incredibly frustrating. And based off of this white paper, it is not changing. This is going to be the same system that is in Black Ops 6, almost 100% guaranteed, because they retain the most players. And they have done tests on either side, reducing, increasing skill-based matchmaking, and the system that they have, they just say is the best for overall player retention. Now, here is my opinion on this. I actually think this is somewhat okay, but if they are doing this, why make it a hidden SR? The first FPS game that I played on console was Halo 3. In public matches, everyone had a visible SR rating. They were different like emblems to go with it, and it almost worked like ranked play. Why do they not just put this into every game mode and then have one mosh pit game mode that does not have skill-based matchmaking? I guarantee, as a whole, most people are going to play those regular modes and try to show off that SR and improve it. But as of right now, it is completely hidden in a way where we are just guessing. Did you do well last game? Well, maybe we're a little bit higher. We're going to get in a sweatier lobby. Why hide it if it's confirmed that it's there? If it's not going anywhere and it does make the gameplay experience better, just show it. Make it visible for all players. You can still have ranked play with a ranked play set of rules, but you can also have an SR rating in the game. If it's what they say and this is better for the game and better for player retention and it is not going anywhere, they should put it into the game in a way where it makes sense and is visible to players and isn't a hidden thing and isn't sneaky and doesn't feel like you're being cheated every time you play the game. That is how I feel about this, and that is essentially what is going to happen. So yes, if you're wondering about skill-based matchmaking, whether it is going to be in Black Ops 6 and how it'll work, that is exactly how. Take what you have in Modern Warfare 3 right now, put it into Black Ops 6, that is it. That is what's going to be there. And that is that. Your level doesn't matter. What you have unlocked doesn't matter. It is just how well you have done in your last few games. That is it. Plain and simple. So, let me know what you think down in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, hit that like button, subscribe, notifications, all that kind of jazz. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and until next time.
We are reaching for the stars, but we'll make it.
What's up, guys? My name is Ace, and with Black Ops 6 right around the corner, it seems the general hype and anticipation is growing, and it's fairly high this year compared to some recent years of Call of Duty. And while I'm personally really excited for this one since I really like Treyarch games, and this time they've actually had quite a long development cycle for this, today I did want to share the handful of concerns that I have for this game going forward. Now, just to be clear, I have played this game a few months back, so I do already know a lot of things about the game that I can't talk about publicly due to my NDA. However, with this list of concerns I have, I'm going to be focusing on things that I don't have any inside information on, or things that were just not set in stone by any means back when I played the game, since there's still room for a lot of things to change, like with weapon balance, for instance. The weapon balance I played with is likely not going to be the same weapon balance that we're going to experience in the beta of the game. So I just want to make sure I'm clear about that before we get into this list. And without further ado, let's dive into it. And honestly, one of the biggest concerns that I have is with the Omni movement system, and not so much my perception of the Omni movement system or my enjoyment with the system. I'm actually really looking forward to diving in more and experimenting a bunch with the movement and maybe figuring out some new things that you can do with it. My concern with Omni movement is more so the community reception to Omni movement. This is quite a big change to the core mechanics of Call of Duty. It's something we've never really experienced before. And anytime there are big changes or innovations when it comes to something so integral to the game like the movement system, there's always going to be a risk that it will turn at least portions of the player base away from the game. So obviously my hope is this will actually bring back or attract more people than it will potentially push away. And at the end of the day, I hope the final balance of Omni movement is such that even for the people that aren't a big fan of it, it's not enough to push them away from the game. But this is something we really won't know for sure until we get it in the hands of the community. I think in the beta, we'll start to get a solid indication of this, since everybody will have an opportunity to try it out and see if they like it or not. And while I do think at least the majority of the player base will be accepting of Omni movement, or maybe even really enjoy Omni movement, I am curious to see and a little bit concerned that certain portions of the community will be pushed away because of this change to the movement system. Now, if you are somebody that's on the fence about it, I hope you're at least willing to give it a shot. You've really got nothing to lose. There will be an open, free portion of the beta, so give it a shot at the very least. But at the end of the day, if it's something that you really hate, I would totally understand. It is a pretty big change to how the movement works in a Call of Duty game, and I don't think it's going to be for absolutely everybody in the community. So that's my first big concern on Black Ops 6. The second one I've got here is connection quality. This is an area where I just feel like Call of Duty's been using the same servers and the same system for quite some time now, and it's frustrating that it seems year after year we never really see any improvements to this. Now, I'm not going to act like Call of Duty has the worst connection experience out of an FPS game that I've played, but at the same time, like I said, it seems like nothing has changed over the years, and you would think that there would be continual improvements to this area, and yet I haven't really noticed any over the years. And as it is right now, I'm just finding way too much inconsistency with the connection experience, and oftentimes, even when I have a good ping in a lobby, the packet loss or packet burst can be crazy, and I also feel like I'm one of the luckier ones where that doesn't happen too often, and other people have it significantly worse, where they're constantly dealing with those issues. So at least from a player's perspective, it really seems like it's time for a significant upgrade when it comes to the general connection experience, whether that's their server infrastructure or how they handle the netcode. I don't really know. I can only speak from a player's perspective here. But my concern with Black Ops 6 is since it is just going to be added to the COD HQ, I'm really not anticipating any major changes to their server infrastructure or how they handle the netcode in the game. And if I had to guess, we're going to be playing on the same servers and the same general netcode that we've been playing on for years now. As for the next thing I've got on my list here, this is the spawn system. And normally, I wouldn't have any concerns going into a Treyarch Call of Duty game. I find Treyarch, out of all of the developers, they tend to handle 6v6 spawns better than any of them. In saying that though, this is Treyarch's first time around with the new branch of the engine, and my understanding of this based on leaks in the past, so it may not be accurate, but as far as I'm aware, this new branch of the engine has entirely different spawn variables, and therefore the spawn system at its core with this newer branch of the engine is just inherently different than it used to be, and in my experience with games on this engine, it's generally worse than what we're typically used to with Treyarch at least. So this is an area where time will tell on this. Perhaps I'm totally misinformed on this, and they're just using the same old spawn system they've been using in the past for Treyarch games, which I think would be just fine. Or maybe those leaks and rumors are correct, but Treyarch is best equipped to rework that spawn system to get it into a much better place than it has been in for recent Infinity Ward Call of Duty games at least. So of course time will tell on this, but I would be lying if I said this wasn't a concern of mine, since the spawn system is so incredibly important when it comes to the general pacing and flow of the game. Next, on a somewhat similar vein, with Black Ops 6 being added to the COD HQ, which is the exact same launcher that the past two games have been on, one of my concerns is that the user interface will be too similar to the current one, because the current one that we're working with is just awful in general, and this is one area where it seems the community is almost unanimously in agreement. The user interface in general sucks to navigate. And based on what we have seen from the reveal, there were several images that were shown off of the game itself. It does appear that at least many elements of the UI are going to be essentially identical to what we're currently working with. Although, of course, that's the type of thing that can change quite a bit, especially later on in development. Things like that can often be shifted. But I do want to point out at least something promising that I saw. I know this isn't much, but it's at least something. And I did cover this in the past when I went through all the little details I was able to pull out, going frame by frame throughout the reveal. With this image right here, if we zoom in-game, when somebody is swapping their loadout, we can see the loadouts are oriented in a vertical menu. And that's at least somewhat promising to see. That's a significantly better way to lay out your loadouts compared to the two-tiered horizontal scrolling that we currently have in Modern Warfare 3 and Modern Warfare 2 we had that. So I'm hoping this is at least an indication that Treyarch is making some adjustments to the UI to make it a little bit more user-friendly, a little easier to navigate, and a bit easier on the eyes as well. Now, admittedly, user interface isn't nearly as important as many of my other concerns because it doesn't directly impact the gameplay, but it is still something that I feel deserved a spot on this list. Next, let's get into some really specific gameplay concerns that I've got here. One of them is the meat shield mechanic that they're adding, where from the reveal we can see that you can take an enemy player hostage mid-game and use them as a meat shield. As funny and kind of interesting as that sounds, from the victim's perspective, I worry that this is going to be way too frustrating, especially if they're able to do this for a long period of time and you're just stuck there waiting for something to happen. You may as well just set your controller down at that point because you're no longer able to play the game because the enemy player has you locked into this animation. And generally speaking, especially in a fast-paced game like Call of Duty where it's just like action, action, action all the time, I'm really not a fan of being locked into situations where you have no control, you have no agency, you can't do anything. And finishing moves can sometimes be frustrating enough, but that's just a few seconds, so that's at least tolerable. What about this meat shield mechanic? I suspect it's going to be longer than a few seconds at least, and therefore that is absolutely a concern on my list here. But of course, again, time will tell on this. We'll have to wait and see how they end up balancing this out. Now, moving on to another concern that I have expressed in the past. This is weapon balance, but honestly, more specifically, sniper rifle weapon balance. And the reason I have this specific concern is looking back to Black Ops Cold War. The sniper balance, in my opinion, wasn't in a great state in that game. And I did do a very basic time to kill analysis of this game, and it seems like for the regular guns, we're going to be seeing a time to kill roughly equal to what we saw in Cold War. And if that's the case, with that level of time to kill, it can make it very tricky to get that perfect balance for one-shot kill weapons, especially sniper rifles that can one-shot kill at any range. And that's not the only reason I'm concerned about sniper balance. Another reason is from an interview with the developers. They mentioned that at least at the time of that interview, all of their sniper rifles were a one-shot kill to the torso and up. And if that holds true going into the launch of the game or the beta even of the game, I am absolutely concerned that snipers are going to be overtuned and really frustrating to try to play against if there's not a bunch of viable counterplay. And that's the thing, I don't want sniper rifles to be totally useless as well, but it is a very fine line between overpowered and useless when you're dealing with a Cold War style time to kill value for your regular full auto guns. But then moving on to my next concern, this is post-launch content support, especially when it comes to 6v6 maps. And a big reason I have this concern is looking back to Cold War. They did not have the greatest track record for 6v6 support in Cold War. And I actually threw a graphic together looking at all of the seasons 1 through 6 for Black Ops Cold War, and I highlighted all of the brand new 6v6 maps in green, the remastered 6v6 maps in orange, and then there's the one reskin map, that Nuketown Holiday version. And that one's different because Nuketown was already in the game, so this is just a reskin of an existing map in the game. But across all of these seasons, we only got 8 brand new maps and 7 remastered maps. Excluding that reskin, that's an average of 2.5 maps per season, which definitely doesn't feel great, especially with the newer style of Call of Duty being treated much more like a game as a service. That definitely felt lackluster that year, and I'm hoping we don't see a repeat of that with Black Ops 6. Now, my faith in this has been renewed a little bit with Sledgehammer this year. They've been doing amazing for 6v6 content for the most part, on average. And I'm hoping that's a general shift within the franchise as a whole and not just a Sledgehammer thing, but I guess we'll find out this time around with Black Ops 6. And this just leaves me with one last section on my list here, which of course I have to include in a video like this. This is, quite simply, the modern style of Call of Duty matchmaking, and I would argue more importantly, the disbanding lobbies. And I'm not going to beat that horse to death too hard in this video. We're not going to dive into all the details since I've talked about this at great length so many times, including recently where I covered the recent white paper they did talking about skill in their matchmaking. But essentially with this, it appears their modern style of SBMM, that's not going anywhere. I don't like it, but that's how it is these days. However, like I said, more importantly, I feel like the disbanding lobbies is the worst part of this system. And I highly suspect we're just going to be seeing the status quo this year with Black Ops 6. I absolutely doubt they're going to be getting rid of disbanding lobbies, and therefore this is a concern of mine as well, is that with these systems in place, regardless of the fact that they're trying to return to that traditional prestige system, which I'm really excited for, I don't think it's really going to feel like a traditional Call of Duty game, like a pre-Modern Warfare 2019 COD game, because of the modern matchmaking and disbanding lobbies. And with that, that wraps it up for the primary concerns that I have at this stage when it comes to Black Ops 6 this year. Like I said at the beginning, I'm definitely excited about this game. I am feeling quite optimistic, but at the same time, I do have these handful of concerns, and I'm just curious to see how they end up playing out. I'm sure for much of this, we're going to figure it out throughout the beta of the game, whereas other points like the post-launch map content, we won't really know until we get into launch, unless the developers state otherwise. And of course, these are all just my thoughts and concerns leading up to Black Ops 6, and I'm really curious to hear from you guys in those comments down below. Based on what we know so far, what are some of your concerns with Black Ops 6? If you enjoyed this one, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.
Check fire! That was close.
Just finish that
stupid ass.
Let's get to what's going on in Israel, because obviously the situation is developing and it will have obvious global consequences. But beyond the global consequences, if you only care about like American domestic politics, this is going to be very important for American domestic politics as well, because Israel, even though they didn't officially technically take credit for it, Israel assassinated Ismail Haniyeh. Ismail Haniyeh, for those of you who don't know, is the Politburo chief of Hamas. He is not the military commander. He is not a part of the Hamas military wing at all. He is the politics chief, the political bureau chief, okay? As in the main guy who was a part of the negotiations process, the guy who was free to travel from Qatar to Turkey to also Tehran. He was in Tehran for the inauguration of the new Iranian president. The new Iranian president, which, by the way, ran on a reform line as well, or significantly more reformist than prior leadership, and he was there in the midst of the ceasefire talks that he has been engaging in. The way that you need to understand it is like he is basically like a diplomat, and his job and his responsibility in this circumstance is the facilitation of the ceasefire negotiations. Now, the Israeli occupying force had already killed his family, like slaughtered his family completely. Children, grandchildren. I think it was either his like sister's whole family too. Like his extended family was all wiped out already, which is, of course, you know, that's expected. I mean, come on. They're in Gaza. Of course, they're going to get killed. That was already expected barbaric behavior from Israel, regardless. By the way, Hezbollah had not confirmed whether or not Fouad Shukur, the Hezbollah top military commander, had been killed until 2 hours ago. They finally confirmed it in the strike in Beirut that occurred yesterday. Israel's been going after top generals and top administration leaders, including obviously militant, like leaders involved in militancy within the resistance groups against Israel and America in the region. There was another person that they killed as well earlier today, but assassinating Ismail Haniyeh is an entirely different equation. And I think people don't fully comprehend it, especially because most people don't know how this works. Most people don't understand what Ismail Haniyeh's job was, and most people are unfortunately deluded on this issue because mainstream media just puts a boatload of false information under the auspices of like impartial coverage. Unless you've been following this stuff closely, watching my broadcast, you're going to be a little bit confused about what is going on. It's really for two reasons. One, Ismail Haniyeh is the, chief negotiator in the hostage negotiations deal in the midst of this like ceasefire demand that the United States government is making, right? That's number one. Why the would you kill the main negotiator out of nowhere? He's a civilian. He's not associated with the military wing regardless. That's number one. Number two, this happened on Iranian soil in the capital. So it's another major escalation from Israel. Now, Israel has killed Iranian nuclear scientists on Iranian soil on a regular basis. But this is akin to like killing a top diplomat, a top foreign diplomat in the midst of negotiations on Iranian soil, which is obviously a little bit different than just like murking nuclear scientists with assassinations. They do on a regular basis, right? Like I said,
Haniyeh was leading ceasefire and hostage release negotiations for Hamas and was widely seen as more moderate and pragmatic than Hamas's military leaders who, after nearly 10 months of brutal warfare, continued to battle Israeli forces in Gaza. The fear now is those talks could be completely abandoned.
Yeah, that's the major issue here, is that there's obviously always going to be internal conflict within any organization. There's internal conflict within, the Knesset in Israel, right? And Yahya Sinwar is seen as a obviously he's the military faction leader. So Yahya Sinwar is seen as like a significantly less moderate figure in terms of the Palestinian resistance than Ismail Haniyeh is. After all, he's the one who's literally negotiating the ceasefire deal. So assassinating the moderate guy who's talking to you about the ceasefire negotiations is the most insane thing you can do. If You want to do the ceasefire deal to begin with and release the hostages to begin with. But they don't want that. Israel has never wanted that, especially Benjamin Netanyahu does not want that. Are you sad Hamas leader is dead? Frick dumb chaser. I'm sad that the Israeli hostages are not returning home. I'm sad that the Palestinian hostages are not returning home. I'm sad that there is no ceasefire in sight. I'm sad that our brutal, violent, barbaric attack dog in the Middle East is completely unleashed and doing whatever the they want to do and escalating tensions with the hopes that daddy, the United States of America, American soldiers, American military men and women will go and defend Israel when they do this kind of shit and get retaliation. The IDF didn't technically claim responsibility, even though they did. They did the same thing because they can't themselves. They're fascists, right? What do we know about fascists? Fascists can never help themselves. They have to flex. So what did the IDF do? On their Facebook account, they posted a photo immediately after the assassination of, they posted a photo of Ismail Haniyeh with the words, target eliminated. Then they deleted it. But of course, everybody saw it. U.S. officials already claimed it was Israel anyway. Of course, everybody knows it's Israel. What are we talking about? Now, why the are we in the suicide pact when the obvious situation here is reining in the attack dog by telling him no more weapons? That's it. That's all you need to do. Like, you just have to say, if you're America in this circumstance, all you have to do is say, hey, you don't want to do this ceasefire that we presented, that we keep repping, that we keep actually pointing to as a good deal, that people are finally asking, demanding in the Western world even. Okay, no more weapons. That's it. It ends tomorrow. It ends yesterday. It could have ended on October 8th if America wanted it to end on October 8th. That's the reality. Iran is going to send another volley of missiles to give America and Israel a 48-hour notice. Anything short of Israel assassinating the Ayatollah on live TV will not have consequences for the state of Israel in the short term. They have passed every single red line. I don't think Iran is interested in doing anything major that puts the existence of the state of Iran as it currently exists at risk. Yeah, Iran said that they will respond, that they will retaliate, but everything that they've done thus far, whether it was after Qasem Soleimani's assassination, which was also illegal and insane, or whether it be after Israel bombed the consulate, it has always been incredibly restrained. So restrained that even Western media has considered it to be restrained. Think about that, okay? They have no business ever giving Iran any kind of positive coverage whatsoever. I think we should look at Lebanon as a far more serious situation. Hezbollah may now use its precision missiles on Israel after its top military leader was assassinated in broad daylight in the middle of Beirut. And Beirut was always the red line for Hezbollah. Civilians were also killed in the strike. The real possibility of war is with Lebanon, in my opinion. I mean, yeah, I think that is a very real consideration. But also Iran's retaliation now. Iran says that they might retaliate, or they've okayed a retaliation. So obviously that's three fronts all of a sudden. You have Gaza, you have Hezbollah in the north, and you have Iran everywhere. You then also have the Yemen retaliation that is very much real as well. Yemen literally bombed a Israeli neighborhood with a drone, with like a bathtub drone. That was insane. That's like previously unheard of shit. Where the is your air defenses? The other side of this story is that Israel only responds to violence, as in Israel only responds positively to violence, positively by their enemies, right? Israel only backs down when they actually see some kind of significant harm to their population. They respond with extra violence when it's obviously an enemy that they consider to be a weak enemy that they can punish by destroying every matter of civil life in the Gaza Strip. But they backed away from further escalations when Iran sent in a ton of drones, including showcasing that they are capable of striking inside of Israel military bases and whatnot. Hezbollah did a similar move when they showed drone footage. Israel also had to back away from their invasion of Lebanon when Hezbollah pushed them out. This is a terrifying lesson to teach the entire resistance group in the region. Like, you're basically telling everybody, we'll murder your children if we find you to be a weak foe. But if you actually show us that there will be consequences for our actions, then we'll back away. That's what they're teaching everybody. They're like, no diplomacy with us. We're rabid. You cannot negotiate with us. We will do everything in our power to keep killing you, especially if we perceive you to be weak. And now they've destroyed the fucking ceasefire talks entirely. Here is what Secretary of State Antony Blinken had to say.
Hania was involved in ceasefire talks in Gaza. What impact is his death going to have?
Well, of course, I've seen the reports, and what I can tell you is this. First, this is something we were not aware of or involved.
Great, man. Thank you. Once again, reiterating that, like, I was asleep on the wheel. Israel is dog walking us. They do whatever the they want. Like, even if it's not true, even if it's literally not true, because Benjamin Netanyahu was in America like last week. What are we talking about, right? Like, they had no conversations about what the next steps are. Even if it is not true, and they were absolutely aware of this, which I think they must have some inclination that it was going to happen. Why the are you saying that Israel gets to do whatever the it wants? You're just showing weakness again. Anyone at this point that still tries to maintain the position that, like, Israel is always looking for a partner in peace but can't find it is the most delusional person on the planet. Do I fault them for being this delusional? No, because every aspect of the media is covering it as though it's Hamas that's like f***ing up the bag, f***ing up the deal over and over again. But it has always been Israel, and it will continue to be Israel. And if you can't see it, I don't know what to tell you. You're in the midst of a hostage negotiation. America wants you to do the hostage negotiation. The entirety of the Western world wants you to do the hostage negotiation. International organs of justice have declared you to be a war criminal, your leadership. The International Criminal Justice Court has declared Israel to be an apartheid. Everyone is basically saying exactly what's going on, and Americans are just going, la, 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 can't hear you, can't hear you. They had a pro-rape protest like this 2 days ago. That's what Israel's worried about. How much rape can their soldiers do on Palestinians that they've detained? That's their top priority right now. The fact that we are going in 10 toes down on this like genocidal apartheid regime in this like weird suicide pact is insane. That sounds fake. Yeah, of course it sounds fake because it's like unimaginably cruel. It sounds utterly psychotic, except if you watch my last video on it, Israel just had its own January 6th moment. Let's get to this. You will see where I talked about it. This 60-minute video will go through all of the details of why the Knesset held an emergency meeting where Benjamin Netanyahu's own Likud party Knesset member actively said, yes, shoving a metal rod in the ass of a detained Palestinian. In the Sdei Teiman facility, which was covered for months at this point by even Western media for having like horrific acts of rape be conducted, a concentration camp that is not actually for Hamas militants, but simply people suspected of being Hamas militants, a concentration camp where they released 40% of the detained Palestinians in a matter of weeks after raping and torturing them, by the way. That concentration camp had 9 of the jailers get arrested by the Israeli government. What did the Israeli public do? They went to the fucking prison and the military courts and tried to personally release the fucking 9 detained soldiers. Now, why did Israel try to actually do some justice here in this one specific instance? It's because they are under investigation by international organs of justice, and they want to avoid getting penalized for it and actually getting punished for it. They want to use the principle of complementarity, the idea that there's due process inside of Israel for war crimes, therefore no international organ of justice can interfere in their affairs, as a mechanism, as a shield. That's why they wanted to do it. That's why they arrested the 9 people. They detained them. Okay, they were released some of them were released, by the way. Iranian media reporting that an Iranian military advisor was killed in Beirut also. Milad Bedi, one of Iran's military advisors in Lebanon, was martyred in last night's attack by Zionist regime fighters in Tahrir. He was settled in the vicinity of Hajj Mohsen Shakar building, and his body was identified a few hours ago. Yeah, this was older post from Vincent Bevins. In the final years of the South African apartheid, the white government decided it must 1. Overthrow the government of Angola, 2. Install a puppet regime in Namibia, 3. Attack Zimbabwe, 4. Attack Botswana, 5. Attack Zambia in order to survive. This did not work. They are going through the exact steps that every prior white supremacist fascist government has gone through. It is a damn near identical circumstance to Nazi Germany. It is a damn near identical circumstance to apartheid South Africa. And Israel has been given a wonderful exit ramp from the resilient Palestinian people to have a South African apartheid ending, which it refuses to do so. And it seems like it will have a Nazi Germany ending instead. The only difference in this dynamic is that America is unconditionally riding with Israel.
Just explain a little further where you believe and what you mean by this analysis in terms of Netanyahu and his political calculations at this point.
I think, first of all, we have to recognize that Netanyahu in particular has been pushing for a war between the United States and Iran for more than 15 years. He's done so using the nuclear program. On a couple of occasions, he was actually quite close. The strategy has been to start the war himself and then drag the U.S. into it. This may have been one of his best chances yet to do so. So it is completely in line with everything else that he's done for the last 15 or so years. Moreover, we know very well that Netanyahu has been the main obstacle for a ceasefire deal. In the Israeli media, it's openly discussed how he actually has been leaking intelligence in order to sabotage the talks. He's being accused by the family members of the hostages, by his own officials, by military officials of being the obstacle. And he's done so for a very simple reason. The minute this war ends, his political career ends and his prison sentence likely will begin, given the corruption charges against him. So prolonging the war has always been a case. Undermining the ceasefire negotiations has been the case. And what is more effective in killing the ceasefire talks than actually killing the person on the other side of the negotiating table? And then you have the Kamala Harris aspect of this. Kamala Harris's body language, her tone, the rhetoric clearly indicated that there will be some form of a shift. How substantive it will be, we don't know, but some form of a shift away from what Biden's approach to Netanyahu, which has been quite differential. But by escalating matters in this way that he has now done, potentially even getting a regional war, he will essentially force Kamala Harris into the same bear hug as Biden voluntarily adopted after October 7th, and will take the initiative away from Kamala Harris in case she becomes president, rather than and forcing her to react to events rather than actually being able to take initiatives on her own.
Dude, I'm telling you right now, this is really bad. If there is an escalation and the United States is brought in to a regional conflict in a much more meaningful capacity in terms of like American soldiers, that's precisely what Benjamin Netanyahu wants. Giving him what he wants is not only devastating for the globe, devastating for oil prices in general, devastating for the global economy in general, but it's over at that point. It's game over. From a simple American election cycle standpoint, this right here, from just simply the conversation, if we're going to look at it in the narrowest way possible, looking at it as like Biden versus Donald Trump, Kamala Harris versus Donald Trump. If this leads to the Biden administration going to war on behalf of Israel, it's the most jover it has ever been for Kamala Harris. It's the most jover for not only just like Israel, it's the most jover for America. It's just miserable. 2 points that I've reiterated this election cycle from the start is, 1, this is the most boring election cycle so far, but it has the capacity to become the most interesting one. We're already there. It has become the most interesting election cycle so far. The other thing that I keep reiterating is an age-old adage from American elections in general. Foreign policy is never top of mind for Americans until it is the only thing for Americans. Vietnam is an example of this. Israel could make this the exact equation. Hania was a terrorist. We should be happy he's gone. If Putin got killed, nobody would be sad. Dude, what are you talking about? Hania is not the equivalent to Putin in this situation. He's not even the equivalent to Zelensky in this situation. He's the guy who's negotiating the ceasefire. What the fuck are you talking about? Putin is comparable to Netanyahu in this equation. No matter how hard liberals and Republicans try not to see that reality, the equivalence here is Putin being Netanyahu, not Ismail Haniyeh.
I will just note one more thing, Becky. We've heard for weeks, you and I have talked endlessly about the ceasefire deal and U.S. officials putting the onus on Hamas, saying the ball is in Hamas's court. They have stopped saying that. In fact, it appears that the ball has switched into Israel's court.
It was always in Israel's court. It's just media always likes to play catch up. Like months later, they're like, oh, well, I guess the Sderot Haman concentration camp is kind of f***ed up. 6 months after the original investigative reporting that comes from Israeli investigative reporters. For the past 3 months, we've said that Hamas is actually ruining the fucking peace deals, and the ceasefire, but maybe it was actually Israel. The ball's on Israel's court. U.S. prepares to counter Iranian attacks on Israel within days, U.S. officials say. U.S. officials say they expect any Iranian retaliation to be from the same playbook as their April 13th attack on Israel, but potentially larger in scope. And it could be also to involve the Lebanese Hezbollah. A senior Israeli official said the Israeli intelligence community expects Iran will launch a wide-ranging missile attack on Israel. Yes, new details emerge on the Ismail Haniyeh assassination. It was a bomb that was smuggled into the guest room with the IRGC, literally in a building where the IRGC straight up controlled 2 months prior, knowing full well that that's where Ismail Haniyeh stays when he visits Tehran. Kind of crazy.
As the political face of Hamas, Haniyeh was also the man sitting in the same room as the Israelis trying to hammer out a hostage deal. That could now be in jeopardy.
When you kill the person you negotiate with, what is the intention? The intention is to kill any possibility for peace.
Today marks 300 days of Hamas captivity for hostages in Gaza.
That's crazy. I hate this framing. Oh, 300 days of Hamas captivity? How about 300 days of genocide, too? You know? Come on. You can't bring up the hostages unless you're going to talk about how Israel has no interest whatsoever in releasing the hostages. Why do you care that the leader of a terrorist organization was assassinated? Number one, Israel is a significantly larger terror organization than Hamas. They are significantly better at doing terror in comparison to Hamas. Hamas are like not even baby terrorists in comparison to what Israel has done. That's number one. Number two, the person that Israel assassinated was the principal negotiator in a ceasefire deal that would see the release of 150 Israeli, some of which are American, citizens. Well, most of them are IDF soldiers at this point, but are prisoners of war and hostages that Hamas has captured for 300 days. You don't do that. You just don't kill the principal negotiator, especially when he is the chief of the Politburo and is not affiliated with the military wing. He's also seen as a more moderate figure within the Palestinian, within Palestinian liberation, within especially the structure of Hamas. So that's what it is. It's one thing to assassinate Haniyeh. It's another to do it specifically in Tehran. It's genuinely hard to imagine, let alone put into words the seriousness of what comes next. Yeah, I mean, that's what I thought too, but I think Iran, they're like relying on Iran not wanting the smoke. Nasrallah also spoke today. Seems a pretty serious response also coming from them in addition to Iran. This is from Timur Azari, Iraq bureau chief of Reuters. Hassan Nasrallah, general secretary of Hezbollah, the leader of Hezbollah in Lebanon, has said he noted that Israel hit a civilian building in the capital suburbs, killing civilians and a top leader. This indicates Hezbollah could strike at or near a major Israeli city, going for a mixed military/civilian target. Do I think Iran has the capacity to take on Israel? Bro, there is no taking on Israel. Taking on Israel means taking on the United States of America. But ultimately, I think America and the rest of the Western world have a lot more to lose in a situation like that. What do I mean by this? Israel benefits from being a steadfast ally and firmly within the ecosystem that the West has created. Imperial core countries have a lot to lose in any kind of destabilization. You say that like the U.S. never lost a war? No, they have. That's what I'm beginning to explain. Imperial core countries live a life of luxury in comparison to the global south. If there is a war with Iran, Iran wouldn't just target Israel. They would target, by way of their resistance groups that they have planted strategically, that, you know, came out of allegiances that they have cut together with, you know, even Sunni groups like Hamas or the Ansar Allah administration in Yemen, allegiances that they have created, and numerous groups in both Syria and Iraq, that they could immediately start targeting oil refineries in Saudi Arabia. All of America's allies in the region, all the Gulf states, would be at risk. Things would get really frustrating for people in America very quickly. It wouldn't just be like, oh, this is a war far away, who gives a shit, whatever. Maybe some American service members die in the process, but we can just kind of not talk about that, like in Afghanistan. It would turn into a complete collapse of the global economy as a consequence of oil prices skyrocketing. There would be a genuine global economic crisis, specifically because the price of a barrel of oil would shoot up so much. Surely Iran isn't crazy enough to take on the entire Gulf in the West. I think that's part of the reason why they're not responding in kind, but instead responding in a very restrained way so far. But yes, I mean, this would be global war, full blown. It's something that I don't think China wants. It's something that I don't think anybody else wants. It's something that I think is so severe that Benjamin Netanyahu thinks he can get away with opening up a second front and potentially a third front and pull America in and keep this limited. But let me tell you, you would not enjoy this at all. None of us would, which is why I've been saying since early October that America has to restrain Israel. Yeah, U.S. can't defend Israel plus every oil field in the Middle East at the same time. I mean, I don't think even the Iron Dome itself, no matter how hard the American defenses try to stop like a full-blown Iranian missile strike with Hezbollah and with Yemen, there's just no way. That would be a shit ton of people dying. In Israel, one death in America is worth so much more in the eyes of Americans than like hundreds of Iranians dying. Even in terms of the calculation, like when you were born in Yemen and all you've known your whole life is genocide and famine as a consequence of Western-backed forces with Saudi Arabia and UAE conducting a man-made famine and creating a genocide in your country, when 100 of your friends die, that's like every other day. That's something that you have experienced in your life. But when you're living in Israel and you're like a marketing executive and you go and you eat your pizza palace and you go and you eat at the pizza palace and you play the shittiest techno music of all time, you're like living a normal life in luxury for the most part. When one person in your country dies, that is something significantly more dramatic because it's like out of the norm. America's geopolitical condition, its position on the planet sheltered it from the worst aspects of World War II because it was so far away. That's why 9/11 was so goddamn significant. It's like, holy shit, 3,000 Americans died on American soil with a foreign-born attack. That was unimaginable. For people in Iraq, that's like, you know, a combination of, you know, maybe a week of America's most intense bombing. For people in Afghanistan, it's the same. Maybe not to the same number, but like over the course of years and years of occupation that America engaged in these countries, they're significantly more used to it. Do you trust the missile story or the bomb story? I trust the bomb story. This question is the bomb story and gives a reason as to why. The Iranian intelligence is insisting on an air-to-surface missile is responsible for the assassination of Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh. The leaks coming from Israel want to establish that a bomb was planted. Israel's want to portray the attack as an intelligence operation and keep it under the category of shadow war, but Iran seems to have decided to deal with the attack as military aggression. Oh. Wait, that also means that, like, Iran wants to retaliate. Iran posted their red flag of vengeance. So did Hezbollah, by the way, as in they have both vowed to take action. Axios reported a few hours ago that U.S. intelligence believes that Iran is preparing for April-style missile attack and U.S. forces are mobilizing the same as well. Do Americans really want another war in the sandbox, though? A lot of Americans and Westerners are having more of an isolationist stance. I mean, it doesn't matter what Americans want. chatter. What you want is completely insignificant, especially when it comes to foreign policy. There's no better representation of this than our undying loyalty, seemingly, to the state of Israel, no matter how aggressive, how violent, and how ridiculous Israel gets with its belligerent actions in the region. This is the readout of the conversation that took place where they discussed with Netanyahu the U.S. efforts to support Israel's defense against threats, including against ballistic missiles. This is, in my opinion, consistently teaching Israel the wrong lessons. Like telling them over and over again that, yeah, you can do whatever the fuck you want, and we are going to defend you. Like, we're going to defend you from the consequences. When you keep telling them, like, oh, yeah, no, we're going to defend you no matter what. We're going to defend you no matter what. Every time you fuck up, every time you keep increasing the pressure, like, then, yeah, of course they're going to keep doing it. President Biden spoke today with the Prime Minister Netanyahu of Israel. The president reaffirmed his commitment to Israel's security against all threats from Iran, including proxy terrorist groups Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Houthis. The president discussed efforts to support Israel's defense against threats, including against ballistic missiles and drones. It included new defensive U.S. military deployments. Together with his commitment to Israel's defense, the president stressed the importance of ongoing efforts to de-escalate broader tensions in the region. Vice President Harris also joined the call. If you want to de-escalate at this point, you got to be like, you're all your own, dog. I wasn't there. I didn't kill Ismail Haniyeh. I've been telling you over and over again that you should do a ceasefire deal. You're actually up the bag for my party's re-election. You're on your own, big dog. That's what America should say. Cut off military aid, and Israel will very quickly change tune. What is this? The VP landed in Atlanta and told the traveling festival Israel has the right to defend itself, adding in particular against the terrorist organization, which is exactly what Hezbollah is. She empathized. We still must work on a diplomatic solution to end the war. Did anyone ask her about how the nuclear-armed country we have pledged unconditionally give our most advanced weapons systems forever is in an active pro-rape insurrection supported by several members of the Knesset? Would that not be a relevant thing to ask? I think so. I suppose the counter thought to that threatening arms cutoff will stop Israel is that it would make them go even more hog wild, that they have nothing to lose while they still have weapons. Yeah, but they don't have. See, the beauty of threatening to cut Israel's arms, the beauty of that entire process is that because they are so fucking belligerent and have not stopped with their endless bombing campaign, they don't exactly have a solid backlog of weapons. It's not like they're sitting on a massive pile or a surplus. They are fully dependent. This entire thing also is on the verge of collapse regardless, because the Israeli economy is tanking. A ton of Israeli people have fled the country. Northern Israel, all of these people that live there have had to leave northern Israel. The Israeli port has had a severe decrease of traffic and trade in general. They are literally losing everything. It's not propping up their economy at all. If they were a country like Russia or a country like the United States of America that have their own arms that they're manufacturing and using, it would be a self-feeding cycle. You don't think so? No, I know it's not the case because they're not a fucking weapons producer. They do like obviously surveillance tech. They do a bunch of like different shit. They produce weapons as well, but not to the same degree as like the United States or especially the type of weapons that we're talking about. Like we're talking about missiles, right? Russia and the United States, when there's a war going on, can prop up their own economy because they have a war economy. They have industry. For reference, they were minus 19% in quarter 4, 2023. USA was plus 3.2 in the same quarter. Also, the irony is like we play a big role in paying their military as well, which makes me even more annoyed. The region is on the verge. This is what Trita Parsi says from the Quincy Institute. The region is on the verge of a war that Netanyahu has triggered, a war that is designed to suck the U.S. into it. And this is all Biden had to say to Netanyahu. Oh, we got to de-escalate tensions. They're asleep on the fucking wheel, dude. Here, this is from July 18th. Israelis leaving the country permanently spiked 285% after October 7, but stabilized since. Haaretz reports 1 in 4 Israeli Jews would leave Israel to another country if they could. New survey finds. Nearly half of Israel's Arab citizens say they would emigrate if given the practical opportunity. According to the latest monthly survey by the Jews, wait, what? Arab citizens. But then it says 1 in 4 Israeli Jews. Oh, half of Israel's Arab population would say they'd leave. A quarter of Israel's Jewish population would say they'd leave. Yo, Israel's the safest place for Jews, though, bro. Without Israel, there would be no save plays, dude. I mean, I know there's Israeli Jews in this chat that are desperately trying to leave. It makes sense. I mean, it especially makes sense for these guys in here because, you know, they're surrounded by the most hostile anti-communist freaks you can get. But Israel's desperate to replace Palestinian farmhands. Newly arrived Indian workers say abuse is common. It's sad that the world is forever going to be changed for the worse because one stupid pig can't let go of power. It's not just one stupid pig that can't let go of power. Because obviously there's a lot of appetite for destruction. There's a straightforward demands for death and destruction from the Israeli population. So it's not necessarily just one person's fault. But one person is like the most responsible. But let's make no mistake, there's a big chunk of the Israeli population that doesn't recognize the danger that is coming their way, the collapse that is so inevitable that you can taste it. One thing that Israeli Jews that are really fucking aggro about continuing the genocide don't actually factor into their calculation, even though 1/4 of Israeli Jews want to leave Israel if given the opportunity, is that this is also spiking anti-Semitism everywhere. Like definitely in the global south, but certainly in the Western world as well. Because of the way that Israel has packaged this death and destruction under the auspices of like protecting Judaism as this monolithic force that is completely aligned. And the media playing a dangerous game, also repeating that line and consistently deploying the anti-Semitism accusations to anyone that dare declare that what Israel is doing is wrong, especially avoiding the coverage of all of those people who are Jewish themselves, who are anti-Zionist, who are out there in the streets. Like all that shit is so dangerous in terms of like anti-Semitism skyrocketing in this country and in all of the countries in the Western world. It's not like we had a handle on anti-Semitism pre-October 7th. Yeah, exactly. Like anti-Semitism has always been there because it is at the heart of fascist thinking, right? And it kind of stems from the liberal attitudes that people have. It's anti-materialist. What do I mean? People love good, bad narratives. Some people are good, some people are bad. There's always a war being waged between good and evil. That's not the truth. People are products of their circumstances. People are directly impacted by their own material conditions. And the constant push and pull leads people into doing bad things, leads people into doing good things, whether you consider to be good or bad. However, liberals don't believe that because they're anti-materialists. So they believe some people are good, some people are bad. This is a major weakness that can easily be exploited by fascists, because ultimately if you think some people are bad, that's going to lead you into consistently trying to find an out-group that is bad. That is just fascism. Fascism is ultranationalism. It's ultranationalism attached to an intractable, unchangeable trait. It can be race, it can be nationality, it can be religion, but it's basically something that is like there's a broadly defined out-group and then there's a broadly defined in-group. That's just what fascism is. And it works so perfectly within the confines of liberal thinking. What do I mean by this? Everyone always ends up saying, well, there's one group of shadowy figures that have always been the villain in society. Who's that group? Jews. After all, they're responsible for the death of Jesus Christ. After all, time and time again, whenever there's like famine, who's to blame? The Jews. That's what has always happened throughout history, and the Nazis basically serialized that shit. They took it especially from the Russians originally, Tsarist Russia, and they streamlined it. So that's why liberal ways of thinking, like good, bad dynamics like this, almost always lend themselves so perfectly, to who the bad guys are. Well, it must be this group of individuals. They're very successful after all, despite all of the shortcomings that they've experienced. Like, that's how you create anti-Semitic sentiment. That's how you push anti-Semitic sentiment. And when Israel is doing actual cartoon villain shit on a daily basis, And like dumb Americans that watch the TV see the cartoon villain shit sometimes on TikTok, and then when they turn on CNN and CNN is like, the Jewish state is the most, the most moral state you've ever seen. When they see their politicians clap for Benjamin Netanyahu like a bunch of goddamn trained SEALs, they're like, well, what the f? I guess Jews do have some kind of weird mind control over the American Congress and the media. That is literally just Jews control the media. That's the narrative. That is what anti-Semites believe. A lot of people do not recognize that, like, they are feeding into this anti-Semitic sentiment when, they don't cover what is going on accurately. And when they constantly say, like when the president comes out and says, Israel's a Jewish state, I'm a Zionist, I love Zionism, Zionism is the best, and that without Israel, no Jew would be safe on the planet. When you're the American president and there's literally more Jews living in the United States of America at any given point than Israel, what the f do you mean? Like, how can you say such a stupid thing? That is how right-wingers will, one, weaponize anti-Semitism, use the media coverage, and basically massage that narrative, not to one that is materialist and not to one that, dictates like, hey, it's actually not like some secret hypnosis power that Jews have collectively, or that Jewish people have the power of mind control, or they control the media or anything like that. But instead, it's America's State Department interest. It's also Christian, evangelical Christianity that dictates that like Armageddon will happen if Jews control Israel. And that creates a big base of support within the Republican Party. Like, people don't understand it. People legitimately don't understand why the we're giving unlimited, unconditional support to Israel. That's a perfectly valid question to ask. For many people who are not going to engage in this critically and go, well, Israel is an unsinkable aircraft carrier with its own espionage facilities in a resource-rich region, and that's why it's one of our most valuable allies on the planet. People don't want to think like that. That's too complicated for them. So they think in their minds, oh, it's because Jews control American government and American media. That's a much easier narrative to align with. That's a much easier narrative to understand.
Encrypted, but when you're using the computer, it's not encrypted anymore. Where do I even start? Do I start with Microsoft forcing a feature that takes screenshots of everything you do on your PC every 5 seconds and puts it into an easily searchable database? Do I start with art contests being taken over by AI art? Or do I start with companies quietly updating their privacy policies to use customer work to train AI, and only revising those policies after major backlash, to which it might be too little too late? Or what about companies like Apple and Nvidia training their AI on thousands of hours of YouTube content without permission? Allegedly, please don't sue me. The onslaught of every tech company racing to implement some half-assed AI feature to artificially pump those stock prices, pun intended, is in full force. From Google Chrome asking you to create a terrible, blurry theme with AI. That looks so fucking bad. To Masterclass.com's useless Class TA that is about as helpful as your mom giving you job search advice in 2024. It is now everywhere. You can't escape some random AI feature on some random website that you never would have thought would need it, like this Notion document or social media sites. Meta AI is especially not useful. The search can tell you Ariana Grande's follow count, but not your own. It can give you cat videos, but won't search for a specific one. I tried to search up a popular meme, "This is the move that made LeBron cry," but it just gave me videos of LeBron James crying. So then I added more details and specifications, and it still gave me videos of LeBron crying. So I used the normal search to do this, and I found the video I was looking for in like 2 seconds.
Athletic expertise. Oh, I get it. I don't look like the average athlete, but I am an absolute fucking unit on the basketball court. That was the move that made LeBron cry.
Why is this here? How does this add to Instagram or make my experience better? Despite what new technologies are setting out to do, AI is creating new problems faster than it can solve them. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Before you get all upset about some robot drama, I've got something special designed by human artists. My first merch drop ever are gamer desk mats, and I'm so excited. I'm so happy with how these turned out. We got Karaoke on the Moon and Tour of the Galaxy, both in 2 colorways. These are thick, detailed, and super high quality. They'll be on sale starting August 2nd, 2024 for patrons and August 9th for everyone else. If you want a desk mat that literally no one else has, this is for you. AI can't make this shit. You'll find the link in the description, and if you want to be reminded when the desk mats come out, you can put your email in on the website. I'm not gonna spam you. I'm not gonna use it for nefarious purposes. I'm not gonna sell it. Don't worry. Okay, back to the video. Thanks. I feel like more people need to know about the disaster that is Microsoft Copilot. This is a Windows 11 AI feature that captures constant screenshots of what you're doing on your computer. Whether you're showing your passwords, sensitive work documents, scrolling around in your bank accounts, private messages with your friends and family, video calls, watching XQC, any embarrassing or sensitive thing, Copilot stores screenshots in plain text on your machine and uses what they call recall to help you pull things up easier. Sure, those screenshots don't get sent anywhere and stay on your computer locally for now, but do you know how easy that makes it for hackers to get a hold of all of your sensitive information now? Before Recall officially launched, it already got hacked. Since all of that screenshot information is saved in the same folder on everyone's computer, hackers can easily write a script to locate and steal those snapshots. Microsoft misled press by saying that your data was encrypted, but when you're using the computer, it's not encrypted anymore. If this sounds terrible, that's because it is. Maybe they should recall. More from me later. With all the backlash from the nerd community, they made this feature optional, but it's on by default. Tech companies lie about privacy all the time, like how incognito mode isn't actually incognito. But this is an absolute failure in cybersecurity. Take it from me, cybersecurity expert over here. As if I needed another reason to distrust Microsoft.
Blitzscaling is prioritizing speed over efficiency. How do you go as fast as possible in order to be the first to scale?
Does AI blitzscale?
Well, it certainly seems like it today, doesn't it?
Figma, a tool to design user interfaces, not to be confused with words like Ligma or even Sigma, launched Figma AI to create mock-ups of apps and had to quickly take it down because it was generating app mock-ups that looked eerily close to Apple's weather app. So you can guess what their AI was trained on. But now they're taking the time that they should have in the first place to refine it. It was rushed to meet a deadline. I can't use Photoshop without Adobe begging me to use their AI features and have fully embraced it. From launching Firefly, their generative AI, with plans for 3D and video. And look what I can do to expand this Pokemon card art. Now with some tweaks, I can enter this into an art contest and take away spots from actual artists who put hundreds of hours into their work. And that's close to what happened. Pokemon's 2024 illustration contest had over 10,000 entries. When they announced the 300 finalists, people were quick to notice some suspicious artworks under similar aliases with the same initials V and K, breaking the entry limit rule, and had weird inconsistencies that are typically attributed to AI work. Pokemon Trading Card Twitter acknowledged this and removed those entries, giving back the spots to actual artists. I don't blame the judges for not catching on to this. this, as this is one of the first years that AI entries could really be a large issue. But it just goes to show how they almost got away with it. With stuff like this, people also started accusing other people of using AI in their artwork. AI art has become so much of a problem that there are now AI art detectors online. And I'm sorry for referring to it as AI art. I don't want to, as art is literally the expression of human creative skill and imagination. But these AI art detectors, while have good intentions, are still wildly inaccurate. Whether that be accusing human art of being generated by AI or vice versa. When I was making my last video, I needed a dinosaur jungle background for a bit. Almost every image on Google was AI generated. I almost thought this one was human-made until I was suspicious of this tree log bending into the water. The dinosaur's arms were weirdly long and uneven. The birds are kind of meshing into each other. The mountains point in weird directions. All of this screams AI. So I put it in one of these detectors and it told me this image was likely human-made. But just to be extra sure, I located this image in Adobe's stock photo library and it stated that I was correct. This was generated with AI, and so is this one, and this one, and this one. I love the idea of having to pay $80 for images that someone just generated in 5 seconds. And looks horrible. I just decided to draw it out with Microsoft Paint instead and thought it turned out pretty good. But this is an image of a dinosaur, something that most people wouldn't think would be misleading to be real. But AI images can be misleading to the point where it's actively rewriting history. In Drew Gooden's video on this subject, he cites a documentary of a murderer that used AI to generate images of her that never existed for the documentary, without telling people it's AI. Of course, looking at this cursed image, you can tell that it's weird and not real. But when AI images are being mixed into our everyday lives in places we don't expect them, AI detection isn't at the top of people's minds. Like this factual-based documentary, or this image of the tank man in Tiananmen Square. This isn't real. This never happened. What happens when fake historical images rise to the top of Google search results? Or when it generates images of Asian Nazis, black founding fathers, and popes? And don't tell me people wouldn't fall for this. Boomers still copy-paste chain messages on Facebook.
There's going to be a co-pilot for every profession. And if you think about that, that's huge.
And not professional activities, because it's going to write my kids' papers, right? My kids' high school papers?
Yes, although the hope is that in the interaction with it, they'll learn to create much more interesting papers.
Sure, buddy, and I wrote a much more interesting paper on the Scarlet Letter because of Cliff Notes. I'm sure asking AI to give you a synopsis on the book and then write the paper for you is great for absorbing material. And the destructive optimism from people in the industry directly reflects why it's being shoved in our faces in every application.
I mean, one of the problems with the current discourse is that it's too much of the fear-based versus hope-based. Imagine a tutor on every smartphone.
I don't know, man. Maybe people are fearful because it's creating serious problems before regulations or laws can keep up. I think I have the right to be more fearful than hopeful when AI can not only rig art competitions, but have even more serious consequences like changing history, creating an easier way for fucked up weirdos to make AI of people and celebrities without their consent or knowledge, scam people easier, or dangerous deepfakes of politicians during election season, all unchecked. I have AI images of me floating around, and these are the ones of me clothed. But if that's just me and this is worldwide, then imagine the more popular creators or celebrities. Imagine some freak at school or work doing this to you or one of your family members who don't have a legal team to help take it down. I'm over 18. How do you think child predators are working with AI? And now with AI video improving at a rapid rate, take all those worries and times it by 10. Take this AI video. This is live. Rigging, VTubers, and filters have been around for decades now, but it's all getting more detailed and more realistic with machine learning, and accessible to a scary degree. They really asked themselves whether they could. and not whether they should. Anyway, look at my feet. Brought to you with love by Bombas. You're welcome. These socks are comfortable, durable, don't have annoying toe seams, have four-wheel drive, and most importantly, are extremely cute or handsome. Whether I'm relaxing in my heels or ready for a night on the town in slides, Bombas has socks for every style and mood. The cool thing is with every purchase, Bombas donates an essential clothing item to someone experiencing homelessness. They've donated over 100 million items across their network of 3,500 giving partners across all 50 states. My viewers get 20% off their first purchase. Just go to bombas.com/Gabby and use code Gabby20 for 20% off. Gabby 20 off. Gabby 20 off. Gabby 20 off. Thanks Bombas again for sponsoring this video. I'm so excited to partner with them. So thanks for checking out the sponsor links and back to the video. Sometimes AI gets things wrong without someone behind it having malicious intent, and these are called hallucinations. You might have seen how it tells you to put glue on your pizza to help the cheese from sliding off.
I want to talk about this term hallucination because it's a very human term. Why use such a human term for basically an AI that's just making mistakes?
A lot of these general capabilities are actually quite human-like. Sometimes when we don't know the answer to something, we will just make up an answer. We will rarely say, I don't know.
This is just a dumb answer. And how is that the standard that they're allowing?
Imagine a tutor on every smartphone.
We will just make up an answer.
But also they keep using human-like terms for it because they don't want you to think of AI as just a computer algorithm. They want you to feel like it's an assistant, co-pilot, human. They want you to feel connected to it, which is why the freak CEO of OpenAI, Sam Altman, got roasted for dropping ChatGPT 4.0 with a voice that sounds weirdly horny for you.
I'm doing a live demo, and frankly, I'm feeling a little bit nervous. Can you help me calm my nerves a little bit?
Oh, you're doing a live demo right now? That's awesome.
I want you to tell him a bedtime story about robots and love.
Oh, a bedtime story about robots and love? I got you covered.
And they asked Scarlett Johansson to voice this AI, but she declined. And then when GPT 4.0 released, people noticed that it sounded weirdly similar to her.
I'm doing great. Thanks for asking. How about you?
Hi, I'm Samantha.
For 4, and then exhale slowly.
I gave it to myself, actually.
In the movie Her, where she plays a human-like AI that develops a weird relationship with a lonely guy. This is Sam Altman's favorite movie, he said. They paused the rollout for this voice assistant as Scarlett Johansson sued OpenAI for this and called for more legislature around AI. But let's go back to the CTO of OpenAI.
An AI that's just making mistakes.
A lot of these general capabilities are actually quite human-like. Sometimes when we don't know the answer to something, we will just make up an answer. We will rarely say, I don't know.
Hang on, I have to put on my bullshit detectors. I've been saving these. How is this a valid explanation as your goal is to get AI on everyone's device? How about instead of AI making things up it doesn't actually know, you code it to tell you it doesn't know, or that the answer is low confidence? I mean, people have noticed that chatbots are increasingly useless, as I demonstrated with Meta's AI and Masterclass's AI being so dumb. Google's AI, Gemini, is not safe either. When you searched something before Gemini, it would show you a top result preview with a link to the source, and that worked pretty well. Now Gemini gives you stupid answers like telling you that pregnant women should smoke 2 to 3 cigarettes per day, when we know it should be more like 8 to 10. Or simple things like how long ago 1919 was. 20 years. They've rebranded their old search and made it worse at the same time because it's referencing satire sites like The Onion and forums like Reddit posts as top results. The AI rush to the top very much feels like a race to the bottom. Fun fact, if you go to udm14.com, you can go back to their old search before AI. Rushing this stuff out is partially why they didn't refine it to be actually good. And while AI is improving now at an exponential rate, it's also bad and inaccurate because it's already stagnating. I'm sure they'll come up with something to make that untrue. But for now, AI companies are already complaining about not having enough data for AI training in just a couple years. But if you have access to basically all of the internet of data to steal from, and it's still not enough data, maybe it's a model problem and not a data problem. If the history of the internet isn't enough, maybe AI isn't as smart as they want you to think it is. AI is only as good as what it's given by a human. AI cannot create something genuinely new that humans can't create.
Did the model see any clips of Ferdinand to know what a bull in a china shop should look like? Was it a fan of SpongeBob?
Wow! You look real good with a mustache, Mr. Krabs.
By the way, my prompt for this crab said nothing about a mustache.
AI generates the average amalgamation of human work, and it only works off the backs of artists. So what's the end goal here? It's never going to be better than human-produced work because human-produced work is all it knows. The best it can do is an uncanny recreation of things that resemble human work but aren't. And we'll look into exactly why a bit later in the video. What I can see it doing is saving companies money for things like stock footage, where instead of sending a guy out with a drone, they can create new stock footage with a click of a button and a subscription cost. And it can trick people with scams, catfishing, non-consensual images and videos. Do you want to live in a world watching footage of places that don't exist, things that never happened, and people who aren't real? The world is already isolating enough.
The effects are crazy. It's dank. I could eat one of these every day. Ooh. Sorry, I got you messy.
AI companies are getting desperate for more content. The New York Times, reported by The Verge, reported by me, says they got so desperate for more training data, OpenAI developed an AI called Whisper to transcribe over 1 million hours of YouTube videos to train ChatGPT. When asked about it, OpenAI knew it was legally questionable, but believed it was fair use. At least a few Google employees, including the CEO of YouTube, have seen unconfirmed reports of them doing this, and possibly using YouTube videos to train Sora, their AI video generating model. The OpenAI CTO was confronted about this, to which this was her reaction.
What data was used to train Sora?
We used publicly available data and licensed data.
So, videos on YouTube?
I'm actually not sure about that.
My sister in Christ, you're a piece of shit. It was confirmed that they did use Shutterstock to train.
Okay. Videos from Facebook, Instagram?
You know, if they were publicly available, publicly available to use, there might be the data, but I'm not sure.
You know that she knows. She's the CTO. Also, the CTO of OpenAI was saying how they train on publicly available content, as if that means it's now available for commercial use. Publicly available does not mean it's free to use. And OpenAI isn't the only one doing this. An investigation by Proof News revealed that over 173,000 YouTube video transcripts were used to train AI from Apple, NVIDIA, Bloomberg, who ironically have conducted some of these interviews I've been referencing. What happens is someone wrote some code to download YouTube video transcripts using YouTube's API if you're a nerd, and then they put it into a group called a dataset. These datasets, I don't give a fuck, they get sold and moved around to train different AI models. And this dataset had YouTube video transcripts from people like Mr. Beast, Jacksepticeye, Marcus Brownlee, PewDiePie, Jarvis Johnson, Drew Gooden, Danny Gonzalez, not mine, for whatever reason. Was I not good enough? Wow. I just wrote in to react. Wow. It stole all of these YouTube videos without anyone's permission, not the creators, not Google, which, by the way, you'd absolutely have to pay for. But don't be fooled. There are no heroes in this story. Google is not innocent either. They're not protecting us out of the goodness of their hearts. They don't want other people downloading YouTube videos to train AI because Google wants it for themselves. Google is also using YouTube videos from its own creators to train its AI models. Now, high-quality data is an ultra commodity for how valuable it is to train AI. A Google spokesperson responded to this, saying that this was permitted under agreements with YouTube creators. All right, I'm tired. Time for a Gabby with a different outfit. Outside of just video, models are being trained on just about everything without permission, from art to forums and even news articles. The New York Times, Chicago Tribune, the Denver Post, other publications, and groups of authors are all suing OpenAI and Microsoft, companies who will probably continue to get sued for copyright infringement. But this is while other publications like Vox Media, The Atlantic, and Time have all signed licensing deals to OpenAI to allow them to train off of their employees' work. Reddit, too, has signed licensing deals to hand over their content to train AI. People have to agree to terms and conditions to use Reddit, Adobe products, YouTube, and other websites, but they didn't know that these terms would be quietly and retroactively changed in order to exploit their contents and their work. At what point are these companies protecting their copyrights and IPs with an iron fist while infringing on individual intellectual copyright? I guess that's why there's a ton of lawsuits. But this is also hilarious because even if AIs do train on licensed content, which they tout as ethical, it still doesn't mean that it is. I could be naive in my thinking here, but I don't understand how companies have the right to license out other people's content. Hosting sites are responsible for monitoring the content that goes on there, but that doesn't suddenly mean they own that content. Like, that intellectual property is not theirs to sell. Like, if I upload a song to Spotify, that doesn't mean that Spotify now owns all the rights to my song and can license it out to third parties. This isn't just people's data they're selling people's work as if they own it. I don't understand how this is legal at all. Stack Overflow, a coding website, did this and licensed out all of their users' code to be trained on AI, and a good amount of people got so pissed that they deleted all of their code off the site and abandoned it. Reddit content being sold also explains why Google's Gemini keeps referencing Reddit posts as facts. It doesn't seem like they're vetting the quality or factualness of the content they're being fed and spitting back out. Don't even get me started on Facebook. That place has become a cesspool for AI. You like John Cena making a sandcastle of John Cena? Industry leaders and venture capitalists keep saying that AI is getting better and smarter as there's more data to train on. But as the internet is flooded with more data generated by AI, the AI gets trained on other AI, creating an average of an average with hallucinations in it. It just becomes AI on PCP. Where did this mustache come from? Where did this beard come from? Purdue University did a study and found that ChatGPT was wrong over half the time when they tested it with programming questions. And 77% of the time it was full of shit. And 40% of the time people overlooked the misinformation. And yeah, it's wrong sometimes, but I wanted to know why. And it's because of fundamentally how it's built. Because in simple terms, generative AI is just trained to predict the next word. It doesn't pull from a large database of facts and knowledge. It's currently an enhanced autocomplete system. So it's more trained to just write plausible sounding statements and not actually be a tutor trained on factual information. It's kind of like asking that guy who thinks he knows everything but doesn't. So like half the time he just spews out random shit that makes him sound smart, but like he's not. He just wants to sound smart.
Okay, so everyone's encountered a crazy person who's drunk off their ass at a cocktail party who says really odd things, or at least every adult has. And, you know, that's not like the world can end.
So since stealing content is clearly resulting in the grand slam of lawsuits for AI companies, they've turned to other weird solutions for running out of content, like creating synthetic data for them to train on, created by other AI models. They want to train AI on AI. This is just AI inbreeding. They want this. So we haven't talked about AI music yet. Musician and YouTuber Rumi had myself and a couple other very experienced and talented musicians on his channel to test whether or not we could decipher an AI voice or a human voice. And even though all of us have listened to thousands of hours of music and vocals, we had a hard time with like half of them. It's permeating through music faster than people realize or can keep up with. It took me way too long to realize that the MWIII sample was actually AI generated. A bit more obvious to tell, but this viral audio is also AI generated.
Ooh, fancy pants, Rich McGee over here. Fuck you.
And don't get me wrong, some of this shit generated by AI is actually hilarious. But it gets you thinking about the future. If you go on Spotify and search up Workday Jazz or something of the sort, you'll get Spotify curated playlists that literally sound the same, with first name, last name, or blank trio artists, with no bios or photos of themselves. And people have begun to notice this. So I checked it out for myself. Either Spotify's algorithm is really good at picking out songs with a similar vibe, or people have started to theorize that Spotify themselves might be generating AI music for Spotify curated playlists, where all the streaming profits would just go back to themselves. Allegedly, this is not proven, and this is just me and people on the internet theorizing and speculating. When Spotify is already known for terrible revenue splits with artists. I can't directly accuse them of this, but it is fishy nonetheless. The AI company behind MWIII, Udio, and another music generative AI, Suno, are actually getting sued by the big three record labels, UMG, Sony Music, and Warner Records. So good luck with that, goddamn. They're fucking cooked. And I hate the way big labels enforce their copyright system as much as the next guy, especially on YouTube. You could hum the melody of a song for 5 seconds and they'd steal all the revenue of your 20-minute video. But in this specific case, they are absolutely right, because the only way for AI to create music from a text prompt is if it's been trained on thousands and thousands of hours of copyrighted songs. Whether they're on a label or not, artists still own creative and intellectual copyrights to their own work. I'm pretty sure, I'm not a fucking lawyer, but I think that's how it works. The difference between a person consuming a bunch of art and then creating something inspired by their favorite work and AI is that AI just takes data and portrays it as its own. It's not necessarily interpreting art. It's not coming up with thoughts of its own, making artistic decisions inspired by things it likes. AI is inherently uncreative.
You know, the way that I see it is this is a tool for extending creativity.
I mean, is it though? People's reactions to AI at a glance kind of feels like when tablets for art, DAWs for music, and digital photography became popular. And old school guys thought their industries were being ruined because technology was advancing. But the real difference is that tools for those arts became way more accessible. Now everyone has access to a camera for photography, for example, or a music studio on your laptop. Advancements that democratized tools. But I guess it's all about perspective too, because where's the line? This person didn't hand place every pixel. They used a program called Blender to help them make it. Personally, I don't mind that. I really like this. But what if someone uses AI to draw a background and then makes original content on top of it? A lot of things are going to become hybrid. What about using code to distort images to make art? There are also tools that can be used in shitty ways, like Photoshop and Facetune, and now video effects that can morph and reshape your body to make you skinnier, prettier, whatever. Ultimately, that line may be up to you and your perspective, and that's really hard to argue. So isn't AI just giving more access to artistic tools? And that's the thing. I don't think you can call this thing a tool for art. Is typing a prompt into a robot really creating art? This is just telling someone on Fiverr what you want and they make it for you, and then you say you made it. No, you didn't. This takes every piece of creative agency out of making art. Rather than making new opportunities to be creative, this removes the creative process entirely. Whether we like it or not, this is just devaluing creative work more than it already is undervalued. Why is the goal to replace creative jobs? Pretty quickly, this is going to cause people to be like, why would I learn how to draw when the AI can do it better than me? Why would I learn how to do music when the AI can do it better than me and faster? Real quick, since I'm trying to cover as much as I can, you may have seen that AI is bad for the environment, and if you're a confused and silly girly like me, you might be wondering how that's the case. Machine learning takes a shit ton of computing power. According to this PDF that looks credible enough that I found online, ChatGPT-3 took about 1,300 megawatts to train. Those words mean nothing to me. There's nothing going on up here when I hear that. So to put it into perspective, you'd have to stream Shape of You by Ed Sheeran 19.5 billion times to reach 1,300 megawatts. 19.5 billion times to reach 1,300 megawatts, or power 130 US homes for an entire year. So, yeah. Listen, guys, I don't want to only complain in this video. I spent the majority of this video complaining. So far, I've covered how generative AI takes away from real artists, how they train on work that isn't theirs without permission, how they can be wildly inaccurate or inappropriate, and how it can be dangerous in society without proper care, which it's not being given the proper care. Not at all. Not at all. There's so much cool art out there by humans. Why do we need this? Art is like the one thing that is so unique to human expression. I don't see how this is useful. Advancing technology for the sake of advancing technology doesn't always mean that it's in a positive direction. Sure, I can generate an image of Mario and Sonic making out, but you know what's funnier? Is knowing that someone drew it out by hand. But that doesn't mean I'm against advancing technology. I've just been talking about generative AI this entire time. Many people, including me, think AI should be used as a tool to make our lives easier, not to replace artists. Why can't AI do my taxes or fold the laundry that you're doing right now? Google actually uses CAPTCHA data to train its AI to recognize fonts better, which helps digitize books. That's cool. A task that makes me wonder how ancient people really had nothing else to do than copy an entire book by hand. It helps AI recognize photos of traffic lights, because God knows you can't, which helps improve Google Maps. An app that also uses machine learning to predict traffic patterns and best routes. Non-generative AI can help interpret data for analysis and trends. It's helped analyze patterns so well that it's helped advance science. It improves Spotify and YouTube recommendations. Improve the selection tool in Photoshop rather than generating crap for me. AI and machine learning are already integrated everywhere that we just don't see or notice. Generative AI is just so in your face that it's easiest for companies to sell to consumers because it's so visible and visual. We just can't help but turn our focus here. How about instead of generating music, unless it's an AI Plankton cover, we stick to tools like Adobe Podcast that's helped save a ton of broken audio.
You'll find AI that will enhance any speech to sound like it was recorded in a studio. Toggle on and off to hear how this recording originally sounded. Feel free to play around with recording your own voice or adding ours.
AI can isolate and enhance vocals and audio from noisy old recordings like the Beatles did in their final record, Now and Then. They tried to isolate John Lennon's demo vocals for this song in 1995, but didn't have the technology to do it well enough. I think of ChatGPT as a starting point to learn about convoluted topics that can be difficult to understand, like mortgage types, interest rates, loans, and it puts it in plain English so I can actually understand what to even start looking up from there. I was shown recently this note-taking AI that will join your meeting and at the end give you an insanely well-detailed list of notes that no one had to take. But again, this makes me wonder where the audio of my meeting is going. Is it being saved? Are there privacy concerns? Do they sell my data? I mean, no one else is selling my data. Let me cosplay as a consultant or someone who's just thought about this for more than 5 seconds. After ChatGPT spits out something, why doesn't it just cite a few sources that are ranked most relevant, or where it matched most of its information from? This can be a weighted score based on the credibility of the source, and how many sources say the same thing. One answer from Reddit should not pop up first. Why doesn't ChatGPT return a confidence score with its answer when asked a factual question? What if there were more refined AI models available that were just for things like scholarly articles and scientific facts? If the AI industry focused more on education and focused on getting the facts right, it could actually be helpful in some way. Because right now, I'd still trust Wikipedia for my paper more than ChatGPT. More tools like this are being developed where you can just upload a bunch of your documents, research, and the AI can help you dig through information in just your files, which I can actually see being useful for research in school. In a perfect world, AI-generated images and video would be correctly labeled, and AI didn't come out of nowhere. This is something that we've been moving towards longer than people realize. From our friend Clippy to Google's Doodle AI that we can now recontextualize given where we are today, to fantasizing about sexy AI ladies in film and media, to Alexa and Google Home. If they released today, they'd just be rebranded as AI products. If you've been here a while, first of all, thank you, but you might remember that I made a video on AI and a correction video some years ago, and my thoughts have drastically changed from then. As we learn more information about stuff, we change our minds and learn and... Hello? I gotta go. The video's too fucking long. Okay, bye!
Lost one.
To the average person, it might look like I'm about to commit shoplifting as I place item after item into my shopping cart and then leave without checking out, scanning my items, or talking to anyone. But I'm not shoplifting. I'm using technology. You see, this is a new type of store that uses sensors, cameras, and AI to track me through the aisles, adding every item that I pick up to a virtual cart. And the moment I exit the store, it charges my account. It's an incredible new technology created by Amazon called Just Walk Out, and it's in dozens of Amazon Fresh grocery stores just like this one. I'm not just gonna not eat them. Okay, anyway, where was I in the script before I became a criminal? Oh yeah, they're an incredible new technology. They're called Amazon Fresh Stores, and they are a gigantic lie. You see, while Amazon was touting these stores as a cashierless solution that allowed them to use AI to cut out all of the on-location workers, it turns out what it really meant by AI was anonymous Indians. Amazon's Just Walk Out stores relied on 1,000 people in India watching, not AI. So it turns out that even though they started implementing this technology in stores in like 2016, as of 2023, Amazon still needed 1,000 people in India reviewing about 70% of all orders to make sure that it worked. In other words, it didn't work. It's just crazy because, like, why did they lie, you know? They didn't have to implement this technology into stores. I don't think anyone was asking for this. And yet, I feel like this kind of thing has been happening a lot lately. Tech companies have been taking some big swings and some even bigger misses. Like so big that in this baseball metaphor, the pitcher's throwing it right down the middle and the batter is in the stands just bashing some fan's head in. And that's why I've gathered you here today at Greg Tech's 2024 Developers Conference, where I will be testing some of the year's greatest tech flops. Starting with The Humane AI pin. I did a video on the AI pin when it was announced months ago as this sort of AI-powered phone replacing device that you wear on your shirt. And look, personally, I'm all for rethinking the form factor of the smartphone to make it less distracting while still maintaining all of the functionality, but unfortunately the AI pin did the opposite of both of those things. In the demos on their own product announcement, it was screwing up hard. It was messing up facts. It also seemed super difficult to use, and it seemed like they were being intentionally vague about what the thing even did in the first place.
It's a standalone device and software platform.
It seemed like the type of thing that literally only a sucker could buy. But that turned out not to be true because I bought one. I ordered this thing in like February and then didn't hear from them for a few months until April when I got an email alerting me that it was time to set up my account. And boy, was I excited. So I'm gonna be honest, I kind of forgot that I bought this, but now my AI pin is ready to be personalized, apparently. Before we can ship you your AI pin, you will need to complete a few quick steps. So I have to set it up before they're even gonna send it to me? Kind of feels like they're calling my bluff. You don't really want this thing. How committed are you to the AI pin? Will you set it up before we even ship it to you? You probably won't configure your Humane subscription, set up your AI pin passcode, and add contacts. And honestly, I don't really want to do those things, but I guess they're not going to send it to me unless I do. It's time to set up your AI pin. There comes a time in every young man's life where he has to set up his AI pin. It's a rite of passage. Oh, that's fun. Is this it? Am I setting it up? Get a little over here, a little over here. It turns out that in addition to the $700 I spent on this thing, I also had to pay $24 a month to access features like the wireless network, cloud storage, and AI services, which in layman's terms are all of the things that the pin does. Luckily, the first 3 months of this service are free, so I probably will never have to actually pay for it. Set up your passcode. Okay, could you guys not look? I'm about to type in my secure passcode. Okay. Your passcode is easy to guess. Consider setting a more secure passcode. Yeah, but could it be so simple that it's actually, you would never guess it? All right, I'll change it. How is that easy to guess? It's my birthday. I guess... Does it know my birthday? Do you know my birthday? Fun fact, I actually didn't know this before recording this video, but it turns out almost every single combination of 4 numbers is easy to guess. How is that easy to guess? But eventually, I reached into the dark recesses of my mind and came up with a number combination so random, so, quite frankly, disgusting, that no one, not even God, not even me later in this video, will be able to guess it. Okay, well, let me write this down somewhere so that I don't forget it. Already using my phone for something because I don't have the pin yet, so I have to use the phone to remember the passcode to the thing that is going to replace my phone. Connect your services. Oh, cool. I can connect my Google Photo and Title services, which I have both. And just like that, I was done. I have solved Humane's riddles, and now they have to send me my prize. All right, well, I guess the next time you see me, I'm going to have the AI pin in my possession. It might even be right here. Okay, let's see if I remember to do that transition. I don't remember the transition I was gonna do, so don't ask. At first I was pretty surprised by how big the box was. I thought that I had just ordered a little tiny pin, but I guess it comes with a bunch of accessories, like a sticker that just says Humane. Cool! But you guys don't care about all that. You guys just want to see the pin. And my God, she was beautiful. For my friend. Oh, shit. Okay. That's my bad. No, I thought that it was going to be attached in there more securely. Come on, Danny, you dunce. But a dunce who was about to become half dunce and half machine. Oh! Oh! In order to start using the pin, I had to unlock it with my passcode, which was explained to me via the laser ink display and an extremely coherent AI voice.
To enter your pass, tap the touchpad, and then hold your hand down to get started. Then raise it if you don't start laser ink display.
Okay, this is kind of crazy. Though, look at it. Look at this. This is like the weirdest way to type in a number ever. I'm gonna do my passcode now. I forgot what my passcode was. Incorrect passcode? What would I have made my passcode? I forgot that I made a passcode. I forgot that I wrote the passcode down in my phone. I tried to click forgot passcode and it told me to go to this website to change it. But somehow, in order to do that, you need to know your existing passcode. Luckily, I recorded me making the passcode so I could go back and watch the screen recording of me doing it. If I was not a YouTuber recording a video about this product, I think I would be locked out forever. Come on, come on, come on, please. Yes, yes, welcome Danny. All right. After months of waiting, I was in. Now it's time to see what this device is capable of.
What is my name?
Your name is not currently known. Please provide it if you would like it to be remembered.
Actually, what's a cool kind of techno cyber sounding name that you could call me instead?
Creating name. How about Neon Vortex?
Yeah, call me that.
Noting your name as Neon Vortex.
I know I might have seemed all cheery and excited about this name on the surface, but the truth is, it destroyed me. I have never heard a name before that not only sounded so cool, but also embodied everything I wished I was. Suave, confident, futuristic. He was everything. Everything I could never be. Neon Vortex. This is the home screen. I'm all caught up, whatever that means. Nothing to report here, man. Don't worry. You've got nothing to worry about.
Your AI pin needs to cool down for a few minutes.
What? Yeah, so apparently it does that. Like a lot. If you use the display for more than 10 minutes or the pin is in close proximity to a heat source, such as, I don't know, the human body, then it'll shut itself down so it can cool down for a few minutes. But hey, man, that's fine with me, you know, that just gives me more time to think. To think about him. The next day, I decided to put the pin's basic phone functionality to the test. Things like calling, texting, navigation. Since this thing is essentially supposed to replace your phone, it should be pretty convenient to do all this stuff on the pin. It should be. The weird thing is it seems like you can't make any changes to the pin on the pin itself for some reason. So if you want to change any settings or add contacts, which I needed to do to test this as a phone, you have to use Humane's web portal on an inferior device like a computer or a phone. Gross! Not a great start for the pin, but now that I have done that, I should hopefully never ever have to use one of those ancient relics again.
It's just one flashing green speck over here. I guess the laser ink display is already kind of messed up. Probably not a good sign for this technology, but you know what? This is a new thing, this whole laser ink display, so I will, whoa. What am I playing? Beyonce and Dolly Parton. Don't know how I started playing that. Guess that's just a feature. If you make just the right gesture, it'll start playing the newest Beyonce song that exists.
All right, let's start off by trying a phone call on this thing. I'm gonna try to call my wife Laura to tell her that I miss her. Call my wife.
I'm sorry. I couldn't find a contact for my wife.
Okay, fair enough. It doesn't know who my wife is, so I'll just tell it. If I tell you who my wife is, will you remember?
Your AI pin can remember who your wife is if you provide the information.
Excellent. So I told him, my wife's name is Laura. Please remember this. It's very important to me.
Updating memory. Noting that your wife is Laura.
I wish people said that every time you told them something important. Updating memory. Yo, what's up, dude? My name's Paul. Updating memory. Analyzing Paul. Great. So now we're both on the same page. My wife is Laura, and I want to call my wife. So now we'll call Laura, right? Call my wife.
Multiple matching contacts. Which one do you mean? Laura Fuexlow or Claire?
What? Claire? The girl I went to college with. Unfortunately, I did have to go back onto my computer to figure this out. And amongst all the data stored within my portal, like my name being Neon Vortex and the tunes I've been rocking out to lately, was the answer. My wife's name, according to the pin, was Lore. It thinks my wife's name is Lore. No, that's simply not correct. So I went ahead and fixed it in the portal, you know, that's what the portal's there for. So I fixed it, I changed it, and now it's gonna work. Call my wife.
There are multiple matching contacts. Which one do you mean?
Oh my God. Call Laura Fuchel.
I'm sorry. I couldn't find a contact for Laura Fuexlow.
How? Okay, so at this point, I don't know what was wrong. It was just like straight up forgetting which contacts it had. It said it couldn't call Laura because it didn't have her contact. Then it said it couldn't call Eddie because it didn't have his contact. Call Eddie Burback.
I'm sorry. I couldn't find a contact for Eddie Burback.
Why? not. And you might think, Danny, maybe there was an error transferring the contacts. Maybe it really doesn't have these contacts. But I know it had Eddie's contact, and do you know how I know? Because it could text Eddie. Can you text Eddie Burback?
What do you want the message to say?
Okay, all right. Still not sure if this is gonna work, but finally, thank God it's letting me do something. Hey, Eddie, it's your... Is it...
Cowboy Carter? Time to strike a...
No, I'm not trying to play Cowboy Carter. Oh God, now it's playing Metro Boomin. Stop.
Anyway, eventually I sent the text to Eddie. It worked. I didn't have any way to know it worked because there's no screen on this device. You can't see what the message you sent said or anything. So I guess you just gotta hope and pray it goes through and accurately transcribes what you said to it, which frankly I am not confident in after the whole lore debacle. Okay. Eddie just texted my actual phone and said, I know you made a video on the pin and I'm positive this is you, but it still feels like a scam, LMAO. I'm too scared to text back to a random number claiming to be my friend. Regardless of scaring my friend, the text went through. This was a huge confident boost. Time to try calling my wife again. Call Laura.
Bad choice letting me live.
What? What is...
Been recorded. Record your message after the tone.
Oh, whoa.
Simply hang up when done. Or for delivery
Hang up.
options, press the pound sign.
I don't want to play like that. I don't want to play Metro Boomin. Hang up. Am I still recording a message? Cancel. I've been on the phone with her for a minute. Hang up. It was some man being like, I don't want to play like that?
I don't want to play like that. I don't want to play with your roommate. Hang up. Am I still recording a message?
Okay, well, yeah, I'd say that was a success. I'd seen a few demos online of Humane's GPS navigation solution. And while it did seem kind of annoying to have to hold your hand up like this the entire time, it seemed pretty doable. As long as they stuck to this, it didn't do anything crazy like, I don't know, going in a completely different direction and making it borderline unusable. So to test it for myself, I drove to a part of town I don't know very well, about a mile away from the nearest Smoothie King with hopes of the pin guiding me to a delicious, delectable treat. Navigate to Smoothie King?
Head north on South Columbia Street toward East Gardner Road. Turn right onto East Gardner Road, then left onto South Washington Street. Follow South Washington Street and turn right onto East Chicago Avenue.
It just gave me all of the directions at once. I wasn't ready for it. Am I supposed to have a notebook to write that down? Also, sorry for the noise. If you live in Illinois or one of the surrounding states, you know it's cicada season. It's the year of the cicada, and they're everywhere. Oh. One just landed on my shoe and then got pissed off that I moved. Eventually, I realized if I look at the laser display, it displays the directions, but not like it did in any of the demos. It just gives you a block of text with every single direction written down. If you're in the shade, that is. If you're in the sun, it gives you nothing. Can't see anything. I was very confused by this and thought surely this could not be right. What happened to all those demos? So just to be sure I wasn't missing something, I asked it again, and this time I got an even stranger response. Directions to Smoothie King.
For accurate and up-to-date directions, consider using a map service like Google Maps or a GPS navigation.
What? Can you give me step-by-step walking instructions to the Smoothie King?
For step-by-step walking directions, it's best to use a navigation app like Google Maps for the most accurate and up-to-date route.
I thought you had navigation instructions. What? So now not only was it forgetting things that it could do in the demo, it was also forgetting that it just moments earlier had given me step-by-step instructions. This thing was regressing at a rapid rate, and if I ever wanted to get to Smoothie King, I was just gonna have to use the directions on my hand and go. Okay, well, I guess I'm just gonna use those written out directions, which start with head south on this road, Columbia Street. And I actually don't know which way is south, so I guess I just have to use the sun to try to figure that out. So the sun is directly overhead. What does that mean? Okay, while I'm walking aimlessly, I just got a text from Laura. So I'm going to use a feature that I've seen them use in the demos where you tell it to catch me up on all my notifications. Tell me what I missed. And it's supposed to like summarize all your notifications. Since I just have one, I assume it's just going to tell me what Laura said. Can you catch me up?
Your message to Laura Fuexlo says, can you catch me up? Okay to send?
No, I want you to tell me what Laura said. What did she say? Can you tell me what she said?
Finding Laura.
Finding Laura?
Laura asked, Okay, hello, what we thinking about lunch?
Oh no, guys. I told Laura that I was having a smoothie for lunch, and now she's saying that she wants a smoothie for lunch too, and I didn't have the heart to tell her that I was just meandering aimlessly down the street with no clear end in sight. And I told her I would get her one, which means I'm on a time crunch now. So that's when I had to kick it into high gear. Walking under the beating sun through a sea of cicada corpses, I trudged and I trudged. Then I realized I had been walking the wrong way for 10 minutes, so I trudged the other way. And after about 35 minutes, I finally made it. I got my smoothies. Let's go. Let's go. Take a picture of my smoothies. I don't know if it took the picture. All right, gang, now that Papa's had his smoothie, it's time for a smoothie-fueled lightning round. Enough about practical functions. Let's see if this thing can have some fun. First, can it do bizarre music prompts? Play music written by YouTubers named Danny. Keep that motherfucking dang on me, and by thing I mean gas. Trust, you don't want to make me... Wow, I don't think my music has ever sounded quite this bad. Yes! Can it detect food like in the commercials? Can I eat this?
Yes, you can eat the mandarin orange.
Yes! Unless it's a tomato and you hold it so it can't see the stem, in which case it thinks it's a red ball.
It's a red ball. No, you cannot eat it.
Oh, what are you, my mother? I'm eating the red ball.
Not safe to eat the red ball. Please reconsider.
Can it prevent me from eating too much salt?
No, you cannot eat the salt directly. It's meant to be used in small amounts to season food.
Yes! Can I buy things like in the demo? What is this book? Okay, by this point, I probably just could have read the title.
Titled The Sneetches and Other Stories.
How did it know? Okay, buy it.
Purchasing is not supported.
No! But most importantly, can this AI be sweet to my dog?
You can be sweet to the dog by petting it gently, giving it treats, speaking to it in a calm and soothing voice.
I'm happy to report that yes. Yes, it can.
Here's your good boy. And here's a treat. Good boy. You know what? Now this isn't so bad. This is just petting a dog. This has nothing to do with the AI pin.
Does anyone want to buy this from me? It's really good. Over the past few months, Mark Zuckerberg has been hopping on the AI bandwagon hard, adding AI features to all of Meta's apps, most notably perhaps in Instagram, where you can't even go to the search bar without Meta's AI trying to suggest searches to you. Sorry, do you think that I came to the search bar because I knew I wanted to search, but I didn't know what for? That's not how searching works. They've also released a bunch of chatbots in Instagram. I like using the word release there because it kind of sounds like a tech product is being released onto the world, but it also kind of sounds like they're unleashing a horde of monsters upon us. They've released the AI chatbots! Oh, fuck, that one looks like Mr. Beast. This is really awesome. You know, personally for me, one of my favorite things about social media is that it started out as a way to connect with each other, but ended up actually making people feel more lonely. So Meta's solution was to use algorithms and manipulate people's emotions to make them even more addicted to the platforms. But then that didn't work either. So now their much better solution is to replace what little human interaction we already got on these platforms with chatbots that look like Mr. Beast for some reason. And I think this is really gonna fix this whole system right up. So I'm very excited to get into these Meta chatbots, but first, I have a very special announcement because this video does have a sponsor, and it is the Pokemon Company International. Guys, this summer in Pokemon Unite is gonna be incredible. You got Ho-Oh sweeping in, and you can snag it for 0 cost. You also have a very cool looking Dark Lord style Charizard Hollowware, which is so cool, and I wish somebody would call me Dark Lord style just once in my life. This summer, you could catch me roaming around the gamer world. My trainer's name is Danky Gonky. Go ahead, hit me up, add me to your squad. Let's go and do some battles together. There's a challenge called the Divine Forest Challenge that lets you trade for a Ho-Oh's license, and guys, let me just tell you, Ho-Oh's no joke. Bringing back defeated allies with its Unite move, Rekindling Flame. You got other sick moves like Sky Attack, fire spin. You're gonna be unstoppable with this thing. This game is just busting at the seams with gifts, daily free prize machine ball throws that promise a hollowware treasure. So if you want to hop into the game, click the link in the description, get into the Pokemon world, and make this a summer to remember. Again, click the link in the description to get Unite today. It's totally free to start on iOS, Android, and Nintendo Switch. And now let's talk chatbots. I'm still actually not sure what the point of adding these chatbots into Instagram is, so I asked it, what can you do? To which it responded that it can help in a variety of ways, from helping to plan a vacation to creating art, which is actually kind of a crazy coincidence, because those are the exact two things that I would literally never want an AI to do for me. It went on to say that its strengths are answering questions, generating text and images, and just chatting. But at this point, all I could think about was the fact that it told me it could plan a vacation. I thought there was no way it could actually do that. And I was right. Can you help me plan a vacation? I'd be happy to help you plan a vacation. To get started, I'll need to know a few details from you. Here are some questions to consider. Where are you interested in going? How long do you have for vacation? What type of vacation are you looking for? What is your budget for the trip? Are there any specific activities? Do you have any preferences for accommodation? So I'm gonna say I want to go somewhere fun and tropical, a nice getaway for me and the family. I'd like to stay at a hotel for 5 days. With all of this information, it suggested a few tropical getaway locations like Hawaii, Cancun, Phuket. But then it said something that I did not expect. It says it can also help me with booking flights and hotels. How can Instagram book me a flight? I'm calling its bluff. I actually don't think this has the capability to do that, because why should it and why would it? So I'm gonna say, okay, book me a flight for next week to Cancun and book the hotel. For flights, I recommend checking out websites like Expedia, Kayak, or directly on airlines websites such as American Airlines, Delta, or United. Yeah, great idea. That's what I would have done anyway. That's like if I went up to an old lady who needed help crossing the street and I said, "Excuse me, ma'am, can I help you cross the street?" And she said, "Oh, thank you, young man, that would be lovely." And then I said, "All right, just put one foot right in front of the other until you get to the other side." And then I gave her a little shove, and I went on my way. Oh, good. It also listed hotel recommendations and then said you can book hotels through websites like link unavailable, or directly to the hotel's website. Thanks. Let me know if you'd like more recommendations or help with booking. Nah, man, I'm good. Okay, so maybe it lied about like the very first thing it said it could do. That could mean that this is a very poorly built tool that doesn't know nothing about crap. But on the other hand, it could mean that this is a very well-built tool that is evil and designed to lie. So I gave it another chance and asked it to entertain me with a game. Let's play a game of treasure hunt adventure. I'll be the game master and describe a scenario, and you decide what actions to take. Okay, pretty cool. This is like one of those old school text-based adventure games. It gave me this long introduction about how I've heard rumors there's a treasure hidden in the jungle, guarded by an ancient temple. It's really trying to set up this mystical world for you to explore. And then it gives me some multiple choice options. I am curious if I can pick options that aren't one of these options. I'm just gonna say, I find the treasure and go home. It's really thinking about this one. It's like, what no, you can't do that. Congratulations, you've reached the treasure. Dang, dude, this game was easy. Would you like to play again or try a different game? No thanks, that was too easy. But it's not just the meta AI. That's not the only AI on Instagram you can talk to. Because a few months ago, Instagram licensed the likeness of a bunch of celebrities like Mr. Beast, Paris Hilton, Tom Brady, so they could make these AI influencers that just have the same face as these celebrities. So here's the Instagram profile for Comedy Zach. He looks exactly like Mr. Beast, but his name is Zach, and he's an AI managed by Meta. He says,